Come on.
I just love when you're in, too. I love when she's in because we're just going to be ripping you a new one the whole time.
By she.
Girls gonna run this.
Yes. They run the world.
I got no problem girls running this at all. By she means Sherry Voluntary. How you doing today?
I'm questionable. Always.
That's all right. Yeah. So you can be questionable nowadays. You know what I mean?
You know.
That's the final Q in the LGBTQQQ. The final one is question. Actually, I think one is questioning.
Is it really?
Now that I'm joking about that, I think one is
I
questioning.
wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I just fell backwards in that one. Hey, Sherry, tell them real quick where they can find some links to some of your stuff and what you're about.
Oh, well, you can find me on Facebook at The Sherry Voluntary Show or Sherry Voluntary or Postcards from Somalia. I'm on YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn.
I was going to ask you, what is the meaning behind the Postcards of Somalia? How did you come up with that name?
Postcards from Somalia. Well, as a libertarian voluntarist, often when you criticize or bring up problems with, the government, whatever, politics, people will say, well, if you don't like it here in America, the good old US of A, you should just move to Somalia. So you hear that so much, it's like a running joke in libertarian circles. So we decided to call our Somalia, like we had actually gone there.
Yeah.
It's our shtick.
I like it.
I think this would be healthy to do now, being that Sherry's going to be with us for the most of the show this morning. We have to get about like 9:30, 9:20.
No, she doesn't have to leave early anymore.
You're stuck
really?
with me for the whole time.
Yeah.
Man, baby.
Listen, I want Sherry to be one of my primary co-host fill-ins, so I got no problem with that. I'm being serious about that too. She's great at what she does.
Oh yeah.
Thanks.
No, that was a serious thing, and I've said to Sherry multiple times, like I'm not exactly where she is yet with the anarcho-capitalist voluntarism thing, which is why I'm going to get you to explain this now. But with that being said, she's one of the most philosophically consistent people I've ever met in my entire life. And I love that virtue almost more than anything else. She's laughing, but I mean totally
Even
serious.
if whatever she says doesn't make sense to you, she's going to run with it.
Not well, and she'd be able to explain it from literally premise one to conclusion C. It makes sense. But I think
called principles, Republicans and Democrats.
The early morning.
Love y'all.
Those early morning jabs. Wow. They sting so much worse than, than the late afternoon jabs. All right, but I do think it'd be healthy right now before we get into some actual topics to sort of frame, I don't want to say your worldview, but you called yourself a voluntarian.
Voluntariist.
Okay. Sorry. So and to me, that's a much more palatable term than anarcho-capitalist, because you hear anarchy and people think the Joker from Batman too, right? No, seriously, that's what they think.
Or Antifa beating up a garbage can.
No, that's probably a better example, right? Exactly.
Right.
So explain just real quick. I don't know if we want to go to a major conversation. Maybe we do, but just explain what that is.
It means that you own yourself completely, and no one in this world has the right to force you to do things that you do not want to do.
That's what I'm talking about.
Basically it.
Yeah. Now that's where ultimately, as far as principles or philosophy is concerned, I think most people listening to the audience right now would say, okay, yeah, sure. Now where Sherry and I diverge a little bit, and where you're probably going to hear this going forward in the conversation for whatever political conversation we bring up is going to be, am I wrong? The practicality of how to make that make sense. That's usually where it seems that you and I diverge, is when we're talking about pragmatic legislation. Most of the time, my thing is there needs to be some version, however minimal. I guess I would consider myself a minarchist at best. And to be frank, probably just a constitutionalist at worst, because I don't know if I'm going to call myself a libertarian.
Real minarchy only involves public utilities, so you're probably more than a minarchist.
Right, I think I would. And that's what I'm saying. I would like to be a minarchist, right? Philosophically speaking, I would like to be, but when it comes to the practical piece of, okay, how do we put the rubber to the road, so to speak, I find myself a lot of times thinking, all right, dude, you kind of need government for some of those things.
Because nothing was ever done before government.
Come on,
right?
Sherry.
Yeah. No roads before taxes, right?
There were no roads before taxes.
Yeah,
That's
right.
true.
No, it's not.
Go look at America before the 16th Amendment. There were no roads.
Yeah.
So says Mr. Henry.
Wrong.
Yeah, wrong.
To quote, somebody.
That actually brings up an interesting topic for what I kind of want to get into today. Look, there's a whole bunch of stuff, some other housekeeping stuff I want to get into. I said it yesterday, and I'll say it one more time right now. The individual I think, maybe not to look for in the 2020 election in the Democrat Party, but certainly going forward, the rising sort of meteoric star, if you will, is Pete Buttigieg. Mayor Pete is better known because no one can pronounce his last name properly. Buttigieg. Yes, I'm pretty sure that's correct. He's the mayor of South Bend, which is basically the mayor of Notre Dame University. But I'm telling y'all, this guy, obviously openly homosexual mayor, married to his husband. I'm not sure for how long, but the point being is, and I'm going to get Sherry's take on this later, this guy... Sean and I have been talking for a while. As soon as Trump came around, literally, once Trump won the primary, we started having conversations of what is going to be the leftist version of populism. We were looking at Brazil. We were looking at France. We were looking at Poland. We were looking at a multitude of other countries that are seeming to ride this nationalist/populist wave. And we were thinking the only true way to combat that is through some leftist version of populism. Now, at the time, one might have misconstrued that and thought it's going to be this socialist push, and it eventually will be, I believe, but there needs to be a better way to package that, and I'm telling y'all, this Mayor Pete guy has it done. If you don't believe me, give me time to play this clip, I'll let you know why. I also maybe want to touch on some a little bit issues today of reparations, and I really just want to throw that issue out there to pose the question. I'm serious, because I may or may not have an opinion on that, but at the same time, it's been such a long time since it's been brought up in any form of legitimate debate or even question. Unfortunately, I think right now your Corkers and your Elizabeth Warrens, whatever, maybe just be using this as some type of ploy or tactic to... It's one of those checkboxes. It is, right? Pro-choice, reparations, healthcare for all. Okay, now you can run for... It's a prerequisite at this point, right?
It's, like zero tolerance. It means zero thinking. That's what it really means.
Sure. And it also gets into very, very weird issues of, okay, man, hold on. First of all, if you're talking about some type of money payback, who are you getting that money from? Is it exclusively Caucasians who owned slaves? I mean, that would make sense on paper.
The Seminole owned black slaves, so I guess we'll have to...
Now we have another problem, right?
Tax that. Yeah, they'll have to pay too.
What do you do about first-generation immigrants? Is my family out of it, or rather my wife's family out of it because she's a first-generation immigrant?
Not me. I'm an immigrant. I'm not first-generation, but I'm Native as well as Caucasian.
Really?
So what do you... Yeah.
See, I don't know, man. All these questions come in. I'll get confusing, but... We also probably around the 7:30 mark have an interview with Abby Johnson. The movie entitled Unplanned was based around her life. Interviewed her yesterday at 10:20 a.m. Facebook caught some of that, so we're actually going to play that pre-recorded interview a little bit later on in this hour. This is where I want to start with today, though. Russ, give me this computer here. I'm going to use this last minute to set this up. All right, so Trump is firing everybody. Nothing new. It's a Game of Thrones episode up there. All your favorite characters end up dying as soon as they become your favorite characters. Now what we have is, yet again, one more time, an immigration crisis, if you will, and Trump's just cleaning house. Here we go. This is CNN, your favorite person, Jake Tapper.
The president publicly said this.
The system is full. Can't take you anymore. Whether it's asylum, whether it's anything you want, it's illegal immigration. Can't take you anymore. We can't take you. Our country is full.
Behind the scenes, according to two witnesses, President Trump told border agents to simply stop letting migrants in. Tell them we don't have the capacity, he said. If judges give you trouble, say, sorry, judge, I can't do it. We don't have the room. After the president left that room, border agents sought further advice from their leaders who told them they were not going to give them that direction. If they did what the president said, in fact, they would be taking on personal liability. You have to follow the law, the border agents were told.
The President of the United States is ordering unlawful acts. I think, isn't that kind of almost a definition of what, I hate to say the word, but I'm not sure it's an impeachable offense, but I will say this.
All right, whoever this commentator is on CNN, hear me right now, real news audience. When he just said, okay, if the president is violating the law, and if he's directing others to violate the law, isn't that kind of the definition of an impeachable offense? I will say, yeah, regardless of if it's coming from a CNN commentator or not. That is true. We got to hit this break coming up, though. I'm going to tell you my real problem with this, and it's, frankly speaking, again, yet one more time, the consistency of the left's inconsistency. My problem is, when then are we okay with violating the law? It seems like it's on any random given occasion. If these particular means justify these particular ends, then it's okay at some point to violate the law. Then at the other time, it's not okay to violate the law. And I'm sitting back wondering, what in the world is the legislature doing in this country? Usually, a representative republic, those representatives are appointed or elected or placed in positions of power to legislate, man. To legislate. I don't like this being in the power of one individual any more than anybody else does. I don't think Sherry likes it being in the power of literally anybody.
Correct.
Hey, 7:19, hit this first break. Be right back.
Money comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah. We'll give it a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah.
Oh, God.
Hey, the milk guy guest?
Yeah.
Is he in studio?
No, he'll be calling in. From everything I know.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't even need to bring my headphones. I'm gonna wear my Princess Leia headphones anyway. That's what Facebook calls them.
Cover up some of that face that you got showing all naked, walking around like nobody cares.
I need those. Who's that character from Star
San
Trek?
Francisco.
Remember that character from Star Trek who was it Data or what's? It wasn't Data.
Which one?
The guy who
Geordie
wore
LaForge.
Yeah. I need one of those things that cover the entire face.
Geordie.
Like a Boba Fett mask or something.
You just need one that goes around here, like a little electronic beard.
Actually,
if I have a band, I'm naming it Electronic Beard.
I actually thought about coming to the studio one day, just going to Party City and buying like the cheapest fake wig I could, or fake beard that I could, and just coming in here, you know.
That'd be awesome.
Just so.
I think you're gonna have to do that. When you have me on the show, I think you're gonna have to just wear a fake beard so I'm not so offended. I'm totally offended. Shooting in West Tennessee today. Pastor shooting.
Rod sent me something yesterday about apparently in Chicago there was 30 people were killed in the span of like 3 hours or something. Another 14 injured. Just terrible. And honestly, I don't know what to do about it because it seems like Chicago police has sort of made their mind up to sort of just let it happen. I know how crass that sounds, but all right.
Who let it happen?
Chicago police.
Oh, well, that's what police do. They have no mandate to protect us, right? So why risk their lives?
Well,
they're valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. But when you have Chicago City Council members that are literally, and you've read this too, I'm not making this up. You have Chicago City Council members that are openly advocating for bringing in armed troops from the UN because their own police aren't doing enough. It's like, dude. So you're advocating for martial law from an international organization, right? Because
they don't understand sovereignty. They don't understand. If they just wouldn't take away people's guns, they probably wouldn't have all the problems they have. And
honestly,
the Democrats running that place so much. Alec Baldwin posted some crazy.
Alec Baldwin.
No.
That guy's so happy that Trump became president. That saved his career. Seriously. I know he pretends like he hates that guy, but without Trump.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Alec Baldwin would be just like his brother
right now.
That was
the second life. Breathed his career.
Stephen Baldwin and Alec Baldwin would be the same person right now without Trump. You know what I mean?
Does Stephen Baldwin imitate him too?
No, I'm saying Stephen Baldwin doesn't do anything right now. He doesn't have a career.
Did he ever really?
Oh, no, I don't have headphones.
Hang out with Kirk Cameron, I guess.
Yeah. Kirk Cameron. Hey. Yeah, that's the other side of that coin, Roz. That's what I'm talking about. Roz always pushes me. Hey, start talking before this song gets too racy. And then when I don't have headphones plugged in time. I had to get my Princess Leia headphones on, Roz. Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah, now this.
He sort of does. Or like a stormtrooper. Which I have on my shirt today. My MC Escher stormtrooper shirt.
Oh, that's cool.
I wore that just for you.
What about if I say this? Help me, Alexander Cortez. You're my only hope. Yeah. Now I'm a socialist, Princess Leia.
She's dead now.
Who? Oh,
Leia.
yeah, Carrie Fisher, right?
Well, Leia, General.
Is she?
In
the movies?
No, in real life.
Spoiler alert. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
In both.
Yeah, no, her character died too, you mean?
Yeah.
I don't remember. When did that happen?
You're so lame.
No, I know. I haven't kept up with a bunch of the new ones.
I didn't know that either.
The new ones are great, though. I will have to say, whoever's been directing those, I think they really revitalized that. When it originally came out, who was it? Disney, right? That bought those rights. I thought to myself, wow, that's pretty exploitive. We're going to be done with this entire franchise. Like the first 3 episodes, if you will. By that I mean number 1, 2, and 3. I don't mean the one made in the 70s or the original ones or whatever. Those were pretty babbage trash. Those were
those weren't Disney.
No. Yeah, but that's why when I thought Disney took over, I was like, dude, you can't get worse than the first 3, but they've been great, right? I mean,
no, they have. The Last Jedi is terrible.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, but it's terrible.
Anyways, someone said Michael saying her character is not dead. Is that true? I thought she did die.
I thought she was dead. I thought she did. Maybe. I guess. Okay, I could be wrong because I've slept since then and head injury. I'm going to do that. I'm going to say it's my head injury.
There you go.
Causes me to forget.
That's the topic at hand right now. Is Princess Leia dead? No, I'm just kidding. That's not the topic at hand right now. What we are talking about, though, is this. Roz, is this computer good again? I'll play this clip one more time, then ask the question. Here we go.
Now, on Friday in Calexico, California, the president publicly said this.
The system is full. Can't take you anymore. Whether it's asylum, whether it's anything you want, it's illegal immigration. Can't take you anymore. We can't take you. Our country is full.
Behind the scenes, according to 2 witnesses, President Trump told border agents to simply stop letting migrants in. Tell them we don't have the capacity, he said. If judges give you trouble, say, sorry, judge, I can't do it. We don't have the room. After the president left that room, border agents sought further advice from their leaders who told them they were not going to give them that direction.
All right. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. Raj, you can kill that computer if you want. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, man. I don't like to take hearsay evidence any more than your next good reporter or political pundit or, I don't know, attorney worth his salt or anything else, okay? I don't. With that being said, let's pretend that it's true for right now. Now, your run-of-the-mill conspiracy theorist might say, hey, Trump's playing 3D chess here. All he's really doing is just getting people to beg the question of when is it okay to enforce our current laws in the book and when is it not okay to enforce our current laws in the book. Now, I'm not saying that's what Trump's doing. Maybe this is just Trump being Trump. Nevertheless, if we do inevitably get to that end result of asking that question, that's the question I'm asking right now, either for Facebook, type in Real News Radio, your Facebook search bar, love interacting with comments there, or for the Crown Plaza call number, 865-888-TALK, 865-888-8255. Here's the question, okay? So if Trump does tell border agents to just stop letting people in, sure, violation of what the laws are currently on this book. You should be allowed to seek asylum. If you're approved for asylum, you should be allowed to be let in. Sure. You can't just arbitrarily shut that down. Any more than you can arbitrarily let someone across the country or let across the borders. Now, I'm not sure if she agrees with that fundamentally, philosophically, but I think she would agree with me. Currently, the laws on the American books are that. Moreover, it seems like the last 3 nights of CNN coverage, I do a lot of CNN coverage here to try and give myself some scope between Breitbart and Fox and Slate and CNN. If I'm getting from CNN the last 3 nights of coverage is going back yet one more time to this separating the children type thing, can I say again, just for the record, the separating of the children thing came down to a decision from the 9th Circuit, yes, that 9th Circuit that was made under the Obama administration that said, if you detain people that are violating American law, either coming through ports of entry that don't have asylum status or coming in other areas across the border physically that are not at ports of entry, you probably should detain them, lest you sort of just let them meander on into this country. If you do detain them, you cannot detain minors. Therefore, you have to necessarily separate people from their parents. Now, to me, it just kind of makes sense, okay? If a mother's driving around with cocaine in her car and her 10-year-old child happens to be in the passenger seat beside her, nobody ever gets up in arms about the child being separated from her mother. Quite simply, the point I'm making is if you violate American law, you do.
I do.
Well, you're not going to put the child in jail, or you're not going to let the woman not go to jail.
Or, you don't arrest people for not being violent towards other people,
sure,
being you didn't say she was on the cocaine.
That's true. I didn't put that qualifier in there. No, but you're right. I do agree with you too. And let me just make this statement right now. I think arguably one of the better things, in my opinion, that Trump has done with this administration right now, if you can find anything, if you don't support Trump, which you would have to, is making some attempt to push for prison sentencing reform. Now, it's not what we want. It's not what we actually need, but I'm telling you right now, man, this nonviolent offenders, I should look up the stats on this, but the percentage of nonviolent offenders that are in jail right now is absolutely absurd. Yeah. It's beyond problematic. You end up creating this perpetual downward cycle where people go in for nonviolent offenses and they stay in there. What's the 3 strike laws right now? And then just to exist in that society, they become worse than they were before. And It's a
There's
it's
a
whole
reason
thing.
they call it con college, right?
Yeah, right.
Like-
I didn't even know they call it that. But you hear where I'm coming from in the real news audience, right? I mean, I guess all I'm saying is, okay, fine. If we're not enforcing our laws on the border, and it seems like the Democrat position right now is to almost advocate for not enforcing those laws right now because we're separating children from their parents, if we are. I think what Trump is saying in the back end is like, all right, dude, if you're violating in the front end, why can't I violate in the back end? Do you know what I'm saying? None of it's right. Not either a single one of them is right. All I'm saying is, do both of those questions put the onus back on the legislature to finally do something about this? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think we can ever find a common ground anymore in America on what immigration laws should and should not be, though. I don't know. Maybe I'll get Sherry's opinion on what immigration law should just be in general for an anarcho-capitalist. And I'll say this right now. Hold on, though, because I'm going to come back with that question. I'm going to come back with Andy as well. Trump isn't violating law, judges. Interesting. Very interesting point. I do want Sherry to explain her opinion on this because I'll tell you right now, if you have a fondness, an affinity for Judge Andrew Napolitano, I would venture to say that Sherry's opinion is probably not too far off from Napolitano's. And I'll make that make sense after this break. 7:30 in the morning. Hit this news break. Be right back.
So, you want my opinion on immigration?
Sure, we just. You don't have to give it if you want. You could just make that noise
Okay.
too if you wanted to. All right.
It's just people, there's so many moving parts. Like, yes, the way things are, but no, the way things should be.
Right.
Like, it's-
You dropped your sweater or hoodie.
Oh.
Oh, you're a gangster. You're gonna get arrested.
Word.
Hey, the Mevo mic's on, so you're entertaining Facebook.
I'm entertained. Oh, well. Well.
Oh, Andy ran away.
Andy.
The collar.
Oh.
Why you gotta do me like that, Andy? Are you, is your stuff on iTunes? What did you use to put that out there? What RSS hoster?
That's a Daniel.
Okay. Are you seriously gonna look at
You see me like,
Daniel, he's in
glaze
here.
over?
He's in here, yeah. Daniel, what are you using to host her RSS feed to put on iTunes?
Radio station. They offered me way too much.
You don't like that kind of money stuff, man.
Listen how unprofessional they're being back there. This is a legitimate show, Sherry.
No,
Is it?
this is my favorite radio show.
Yeah, all right, good. Radio show. Oh, Daniel's cracking on you.
Oh, that's Daniel's favorite pastime.
He said your natural hair color is black, like your soul.
That's true though.
All right.
Oh. My hair this morning is crazy. I'm having a hard time. Huh? I don't know. Maybe. Do I know one?
What's his last name? Is it Heimerschmidt?
John.
I think his middle name is Jacob, right?
Schmidt.
Yeah.
His name is my name too.
It's true, yeah.
My favorite part of that song. I need to what? Oh. All right.
Watch yourself, Sherry.
My favorite part of that song is da 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 da, whatever that is.
You're at a libertarian meeting tonight? Oh, right, you're not doing that anymore.
Is not doing what?
There's a libertarian meeting tonight in Merville, but I guess that's not you anymore, is it?
I mean, I'm not officially in the party, but I hang out with them still.
All right. They haven't excommunicated you yet?
Well, I mean, they've excommunicated most libertarians. No, not really. Like, no.
Hey, you may have to coach me a little bit on this milk guy stuff. No?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
All right.
We're winging it, man.
All right. It's good to me, good to me. I just didn't know. I'm trying to figure out how we're going to make that sort of a political interview, you know what I mean?
Well, we've got the Briggs proposed legislation that, against the cow share, and
To have something to do with the pasteurization of it or something? Or?
it's the raw. It's a reporting bill, is what he told me when I was at the house recently. I went up there and talked to him.
Who, this guy or Briggs?
Briggs.
Oh, okay.
So I haven't read the bill though, so I don't know. I don't trust him. I mean, but what he said made sense. But
Hey!
It's 7:38 in the morning. Hey, Sherry, real quick, so the audience members know where to find your stuff, the whole Sherry voluntary thing. I know this is going to sound stupid, but spell Sherry for them.
It's the right way, right? Sherry. And can I just say, I've never heard that song before. Where'd you find that?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. Oh, okay. I was about to say, you really have it?
Y'all so basic. Y'all so basic.
I was about to say, Sherry, I played that plenty of times for you.
Yeah, I asked Sherry to spell her name because my mother spells hers Sheree.
I've never even seen
she's
that.
wrong.
I've seen it with an I. There's a
I've
whole bunch of
never
ways to
seen
say it.
that.
No?
With 2 E's?
What's my
With
mother?
a Q?
My mother gets
Weird.
Cherie a lot as opposed to Sherry.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of Sherry, let's go to John on the Crown Plaza call number 865-888-TALK. That's 865-888-8255. Let's see. I was going to say something else. Yeah, that's the number you call if you have a comment about anything we're talking about. John, thanks for hanging through the break there, sir. Comment for Sherry is the subheading here on my Comrex screen. What's on your mind, sir?
Three things. First off, Sherry, I can't believe you don't know that song.
It was a joke.
I wanted to say that I pretty much agreed with every single retort and expression and sigh that Sherry's given so far.
Yeah, most people do.
But secondly, there were three things. Secondly, I really want to thank Roz because around Valentine's Day, she gave me 4 tickets to the hockey game, and we took my step-grandson along with his girlfriend and my wife to the last Ice Bears game.
Oh, you're welcome.
And it was absolutely wonderful. That is just I'd seen one hockey game a long time ago, too long ago to say, but not here. It was up north, and that was the most wonderful experience. What a sport!
Yeah, I tell that people all the time. Even if you have no idea how the game goes, if you don't know the rules or whatever else,
They keep it interesting. They keep it fun, especially for the kids. They have so much things for the kids there too.
They fight on ice. Like it's amazing.
Yeah, true voluntarism. Yeah, and that should really go well in this state. But the third thing I wanted to say is I'm going to put a link up onto the Facebook when I get to work here of a friend talking about Christians and politics. And in particular, this friend of mine is a missionary to Bulgaria, and he has actually debated other libertarians in Red Square in Russian. He is a libertarian, but there were just some nuances. All different groups have their nuances.
And we're all about nuance.
Yeah, especially libertarians. But he was trying to correct some of their basic foundations. And I think 2 of them were Americans that were there. And, of course, he was the only one that spoke fluent Russian, which influenced the audience as well. But I'm going to put a link in there, and I think you may be interested, Sherry, in listening to that, or all of you, because it's, what is the proper viewpoint? Is there a proper viewpoint for Christians and politics? And he would posit that there definitely is. And I think, yeah. So I think some of Sherry's retorts and sort of sighs and stuff bring out some of the nuances, even in the way she's speaking. And that's all I had to say, but I'll listen.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
John. I appreciate your call.
Can I just plug one more thing along those lines?
Yeah.
My dear friend, Mike Maharry, who is with the 10th Amendment Center, which you guys should know about. If you know about nullification, then you've heard of them. He does another podcast called Godarchy, and it's amazing. And it talks a lot along those lines as well about Christianity and anarchism.
Very interesting. No, I don't know. I personally come from the opinion that it's not surprising if your Christianity pours into your politics. I don't think you're ever the state should ever overrun into religion. I mean, I think we have an amendment that kind of protects you from that. But at the same time, you brought up nullification. For those that don't know that word,
look it up.
Yeah, look it up.
Good stuff there, yo.
It's basically a jury just saying, forget about the law. We can do what we want to in this situation.
It's more than just juries, though. If you want to talk about it for a minute.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
So nullification is that people have the right to decide whether laws are just. Not. So what oftentimes happens is that when you say you go into a court situation as a juror, the judge, they come back with a hung jury, and the judge will say, you're not deciding whether the law is correct. You're deciding whether this person broke the law. That's the authoritarian standpoint. But the founding fathers believed in nullification, and they saw it as a check and balance to the government making laws that nobody in a community wants. So, like when someone does something that the community doesn't see as immoral, but the law says they can say this law is basically null and void. And you can do that in your regular life, too.
See, and this is where Sherry and I start to diverge a little bit. I told you this before when we get into sort of the practical level. That approach seems too arbitrary. It seems like there's too much of a subjective component to me. It also seems at some point, too, it's inevitably designed to circumvent the legislature. Now, what I mean by that is, on any given occasion, if you can, like these free citizens, is that what they're called? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like these people that get pulled over and said that I'm a free citizen, or is that is that what they're called? What are they called?
I think that's what they call them, sovereign citizens.
Sovereign citizens. Thank you. I knew it was a different term for it. These people that get pulled over and call themselves sovereign citizens or something. I lose my ever-loving mind with that, man. There's one clip in particular where some girls get pulled over with their boyfriend and saying, like, I'm not beholden to any American laws, but I get still all the American liberties for myself. It's like, I understand the principle of what you're talking about. The liberties that are in your life don't necessarily come from the government. They are just recognized by the government because they come from your creator. Fine. But at the same time, unfortunately, at a practical level, you do exist in America, and America does have laws on the books. Now, if you don't want those laws to be on the books, this is why I appreciated Justice Scalia so much. His whole point was, dude, I'm an old guy. I'm not a nice guy. I'm an old man. I'm a Catholic. Nobody in this country agrees with me about anything, nor should they. He was not a nice guy. Met him before. He's not a nice guy. But I appreciated his principle because he said, I'm only up here for one reason, to read these four corners of this one document and to tell you, based upon precedent, because I know that better than you, what that means in this particular context. If you don't like this context, change it. Y'all have a way to change it.
What you're actually saying is that you trust 12 people in black dresses more than you trust your neighbors to decide what's moral as far as law goes.
No,
that's really what you're saying.
Not what's moral though. What makes sense contextually based upon previous precedent.
But the laws judge morality all the time.
Oh, of course they do.
And a community has the right to say, no, we're not going to prosecute people who are non-violent in our community. And you can take the law and you can put it back where it came from, because we understand in our community that this is not a problem, and we don't want people in prison situations and their lives ruined because
I completely agree, but the Supreme Court should not be legislating. They should be telling you what legislation means based upon previous legislation. Well, they do, but it's wrong when they do. I'm saying again, that's why I think Scalia and Thomas in particular was great. Thomas wants to repeal everything prior to the 14th Amendment. He doesn't want any incorporation at all, which I think is fantastic. Incorporation, I mean bringing the 10th Amendment, the Bill of Rights into the states. Let the states make that up for themselves, as far as I'm concerned. Anyways, Scalia would always say, dude, we have no purview over abortion. We have no purview over homosexual marriage. That should be left up to you, the literal people, at any given state level, which I agree with. But to what you said, though, it becomes frustrating for me because not in America necessarily, but if you extrapolate this a little bit further, I would say, okay, Kenyans going to preemptively kill some Rwandan tribe that wants to kill them first. They might find that justifiable. Do you know what I'm saying? Where I wouldn't. It just seems like there's a subjective component to what is moral.
That's not the same situation, right? That really isn't. Murder is always wrong. So, you don't need a law to tell you that murder is wrong, right?
Well,
people
I don't know
this.
though. I mean, but moral relativism is a thing.
People understand that basically all humans understand justice, and they understand what's right and wrong, basically, because you know that if you don't want something done to you, that it's not right to do to other people. That's basic, just people figure that out, right? Kids on a playground know this, that he took my toy and that's not right. I want it back. Like that's, people, there are certain basics in life. So no, I don't accept that premise that, some people think murder's okay. Well, yeah, they call those psychopaths. Like they're not right. They're not, that's not correct. And the majority of humans know this. So, nullification is different because it's saying was it Adams or someone? He's got a lot of information on why jury nullification was a good thing, because it is the community's way of keeping a government from running roughshod over it. Like, let's take something that your audience is very, very, I'm sure, behind is the Second Amendment, right? Gun laws, the right to protect yourself, correct? Okay, so no matter what laws people make against guns, do you have the right to protect yourself?
Sure.
By whatever means that you can access.
Yeah, that's why I brought up the refugee argument.
You should be able to, a jury should be able to say this violates natural rights of a human to protect themselves, and we are not going to stand for that, no matter what the law says, because legality and morality are separate things. Just because something's legal does not make it moral, and it does not make it something you should obey. Disobedience is a virtue, y'all.
No, I tend to agree, but that's why I brought up the refugee argument before, because if it gets extreme enough, if I have another tribe that's killing my tribe members for a generation upon a generation, and I want that to stop, it could be very reasonable then for someone to justify that based upon a principle of self-defense or even a legal principle of defense of others, which is the same thing as self-defense in most states as far as that's concerned. The principle still remains, though, of it being self-defense. I mean, maybe one wouldn't call that murder. They might call it justifiable homicide.
But you can move the goalposts wherever you you want. Murder is still murder, right? Defense is still defense. And a lot of times the governments are the ones that cloud those issues.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, again, my biggest push today, though, is I just want the 10th Amendment to reign supreme, and I just want legislatures to do what they're supposed to do. I truly do believe in a representative republic, not necessarily democracy. I don't want the mob rule running ramshot over everybody. I just want states to be able to decide for themselves, but I want the state legislatures to actually do something. I would prefer the national legislatures to do something as well. But at my core, I believe that a coalescence of a community to get together and decide what is just and what is not just, what we want to be enforceable and not enforceable, I believe that happens at the level of the legislature. Now, jury nullification certainly is a thing that should be absolutely advocated for. Real quick, nullification is just if you have a jury, if the laws are on the books and you tell them what the law is, and you have empirical evidence that the law has been violated, they still don't have to convict. That's why you're judged by a jury of your peers. It may be illegal. You may have violated the law, but unless until you're convicted and sentenced, it doesn't matter. It doesn't necessarily matter. It doesn't. You can have a jury of people that are sympathetic to your cause and say, forget about that law. I'm not going to hold you accountable for that. That is a very real thing in America, and that's what Sherry's talking about, too. It needs to remain a very real thing. And frankly speaking, it needs to be a thing that's promoted more often because, dude, I would venture to say 2%, 5% of Americans know that that's even a thing.
Well, judges and they just absolutely say that you can't talk about it. And if they ask you a question, do you know about jury nullification? And you say yes, generally you're out the door.
Oh yeah, voir dire will get you that.
Yeah.
Hey, 7:50 in the morning. Hit this next break. Be right back.
Grant. Little respect. I'm sorry, I kind of steered that conversation in the wrong.
No, that's what makes for the best radio. I knew you were going to say something about sorry. That's why I love having you in here. That makes for 8 great segments.
Wow, I can't believe this hour's almost over.
I know.
It was so fast.
I still got to throw that Abby Johnson thing in here somehow. That unplanned person.
Oh yeah, I want to see that. That looks really
Yeah.
interesting. I mean,
Where did this go? I'm getting very worried about this guest.
you're talking about, her, the woman or the guy?
No, here's what I'm trying to figure out. We have Bradley Bleasdale.
Right.
Is that his name?
I guess that's how you said it. I'm not sure.
Blaisdell? Anyway,
Yeah, he's the milk guy, right?
yeah.
Well, for one, you can talk to him about his event coming up at AFP. Ask him about his farm, and what got him into the.
Yeah.
That takes up a lot.
He apparently went to law school and decided against that. I could relate to that. Life, liberty, and pursuit of raw milk is a bold message on food freedom and government overreach. All right, so that that'll basically all of it. All right.
Yeah, and talk about how long the war on raw milk. If you want to talk about wars, that's been going a long time.
Is this the? He's from Fall Creek Farms. That's not the farm that got into big controversy recently for the. It was not E. coli, but it was the.
I'm not sure. That's
Right.
what Briggs was saying, was that this was one of the things that he believes that he wants for his bill is a reporting where they have to register. If you want to sell,
Raw.
you can't sell raw milk because that's illegal.
Is it?
That could be, it's illegal in state. That's where jury
I thought you
nullification
couldn't
can come
Tennessee.
in. No, you cannot.
Really?
You can do animal shares, which is where you own part of the animal, and therefore you can go and get milk from your animal. That's how they get around it.
Oh.
That's how they get
so
around
funny.
it. That's your nullification.
That's
right
awesome.
Now. That's practical nullification. That's saying this law is stupid and we're, we can take a chance. We're grown-ups. But some people have gotten hurt. Clearly, I don't know that it's actually been linked back to them completely in every case.
Right.
But he said in one case they went like 3 or 4 days and the people wouldn't let them on the property.
On their own
They
property?
wouldn't let the health department on the
Oh.
farm's property. And what he says is that he wants them to have to take a class on proper handling and also register with the state and have, that gives the state access to trace back where these problems are coming from. So it's a reporting bill from what he said. I haven't read it though, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, which is hard for me because he's a politician.
Right.
But
All right, so we'll do probably the raw milk thing for 2 segments, maybe 8:30, and then I'll do the Abby Johnson interview from till 9 or something. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to hearing that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Hey, Ross, we love you, and you know that. What? I thought it was great. Great. I thought it was great.
Just a chance I take.
7:55
In the morning. That's when I regret actually ever doing. I'm pretty sure if anything's ever gonna destroy my political career, it's gonna be that audio clip right there. East Tennesseans are gonna think to themselves like, oh, dude, we can't have someone that embarrassing representing anything, man. We don't know what he does with his spare time. Ah, goodness. Real news. Welcome back. 7:55. Only got a couple minutes left here. We, if you just joined us, we've been a little bit all over the place. We start out sort of talking about immigration, but not really. I figured that'd pick up a little bit more, but I don't know, man. Maybe people are just done with it. Maybe they are.
Can I just, from the Facebook comments
yeah.
here? Kathleen on Facebook said that murder is the unlawful, in all caps, killing of another human being. So my question is, if there's no law, does that make murder okay?
Right.
Like, that's just silly. It's the unjust killing of another human being.
Well, but you know where this is coming from, too, sure. I mean, like, look, when Roe passed, a lot of people all of a sudden got this tendency, and not necessarily immediately in 1974. Okay, it didn't happen a year later, but as decades went on, people got this gradual tendency, I believe, to think, okay, fine, abortion is now legal, therefore it must have some semblance of being moral, right?
Well, that's her. Like, I don't think that's the point she's making,
not,
but that's what people would say. But then you go, well, what about abortion? That's legal.
Right.
So that makes it okay. Like, you can't, legality and morality are separate. Just because the authority tells you something's okay, they tell you civil asset forfeiture, which I think we're going to talk about, which is just the blatant robbing of people on the side of the road with no criminal conviction is okay. And police do it all the time in this country.
All right, so I know the answer that you're going to give, Sherry, but then why do we still have it in Tennessee? I mean, because I agree with you. It seems very, very clear.
Because the back the blue authoritarian law is correct. People back this stuff and make it okay because they're uneducated on it, and that's the real. And I'm not saying that to be. I know I'm passionate, so I come off as angry at people, but it really is a matter of education, and it's absolute incentivized predation against the citizens.
And again, to be clear, we're not talking about criminal asset forfeiture. I don't know how Sherry feels about that. I guarantee she feels a little bit better about that than civil asset forfeiture.
Oh, absolutely. At least you have a conviction.
Yeah, right. Okay,
even
so
if the courts are
if
jokes.
you charge me with the crime of trafficking cocaine, then yeah, fine, take my cocaine from me because you charged me with a crime. Civil asset forfeiture is where you, the person, don't get charged with anything. They charge your property with a crime, and then it's up to the discretion of the police officer to say, yeah, we think it was used or going to be used in the purchase of drugs. I don't know, man. It doesn't matter that you're 89.
I just had our mutual friend Eric Wyatter on my show. Yeah, and it's
I think
coming
he's
out
on Thursday or Friday actually. So yeah.
Oh, he's coming here.
Yeah.
Oh, great. He's so great.
Yeah, he's good.
And he's with the campaign to end civil asset forfeiture in Tennessee, of course. And he told me on the show that's coming out Thursday, Sherry Voluntary Show. Check it out on YouTube. Subscribe. Anyways, that there was a county in Tennessee where $45 was the average amount taken from the citizens. In order, they were saying that was drug money.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's all the police have to do is say, I think this is drug money. I'm going to take it.
And then you have to go prove your property's innocence.
Right. You have to pay a lawyer, go take it.
It flips the whole system on its head, where it's no longer innocent until proven guilty. Your property is guilty, and then you have to prove its innocence.
And going back to another point, that's where nullification comes in.
Hey, there you go.
Jury nullification, because the jury would say, that's ridiculous.
We bookend all that. If you could get a jury in a civil asset forfeiture case, which you never could. 7:58, stick around for news, traffic, weather, all that. Be right back.
Hey, yeah! All right, what do I want to leave Facebook with today? What about some civil asset forfeiture stuff?
What, you're going to do what with them?
Oh, during the breaks, I put the Mevo. It's cool. I can switch between what's coming out of the board or between
That's
that
cool.
mic
I
and
know,
the
this
Mevo.
thing is cool.
Yeah, it works out. See, look, now you see now your face is zoomed in? Woo! Look at you.
Blue steel. Wait, no, you gotta do this. Blue steel.
That was perfect. I zoomed in his face at the right time. I'll leave him some civil asset forfeiture. I put audio on in the background that's far more interesting than...
That's cool.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, so many people are just ignorant about this. And, you know, people think ignorant means you're calling them a bad name, but it just means you need to get educated on something, not that you're bad.
John Oliver cusses too much, doesn't he? Probably.
I don't know. I don't really watch John Oliver generally.
I used to watch him a
It
lot.
is on cable, so
Yeah, that's true. I used to like him quite a bit, but
see if you can find Ron Paul talking on civil asset forfeiture or something like that. He never pisses.
it's just something that just seems to make so much sense to everybody. I mean, like, for example, Justice Thomas never, ever gives public interviews. I'm talking literally for anything. The last time he asked a question was like 2 weeks ago in oral argument, and the last time prior to that was like 10 years prior to that, and he never says anything about anything. The one time he gave a public interview recently was specifically about civil asset forfeiture, saying, bro, this is straight up
It goes
unconstitutional.
against every principle that I don't care who, anarchists
First
or
up, Donald Trump has now weighed in on an issue that drives
of freedom.
Hey, Facebook, I'm going to leave y'all with some Ron Paul civil asset forfeiture. I'm going to take a break thing, and then BRB, as the kids say. Do kids still say that?
Say what?
BRB?
I say it.
All right,
So
good.
kids probably don't say it.
The first up, Donald Trump has now weighed in on an issue that drives libertarians crazy, civil asset forfeiture. And he did it in a way that seemingly makes the controversial practice part of his administration's policy. Listen to this from a meeting the president had with a group of sheriffs.
We got a state senator in Texas that was talking about introducing legislation to require conviction before we could receive that forfeiture money. And I told him that the cartel would build a monument to him in Mexico if he could get that legislation.
Who's the state senator? Want to give his name? We'll destroy his career.
Will destroy his career. So, President Trump may have been joking about ruining the career of a Texas state lawmaker, but it is clear that he agreed with the sheriff that it should be okay for the government to seize the cash and property of somebody who's only suspected of a crime, not someone who's been convicted. Now, there may be no better example of big government gone crazy. Let's see what Dr. Ron Paul has to think of all this. He's the host of the Ron Paul Liberty Report, as well as a former congressman and presidential candidate. So, Dr. Paul, this is coming from some sheriffs in your neck of the woods. The Rockwall County Sheriff, Harold Evenson, basically calling out this Texas state lawmaker who wanted to put an end to civil asset forfeiture. What do you think about all this?
Well, I think he's endorsing theft. That's what they're doing. They're stealing stuff. They have no right to come because somebody is a suspect and they happen to stop some automobile because they have some cash in the car. They can take their money and then that person has to try to recoup it and get it, or if there's drugs in the car or for whatever. I mean, it is the worst thing that can be done in civil asset forfeiture. It's all this bizarre, out-of-control war on drugs, and unfortunately, we haven't had much hint that the new administration is going to help us out there to come around to a sensible approach to the war on drugs, like getting rid of most of it. And yet we were hopeful that Obama would be better, but he wasn't a lot better until at the end when he did do some pardons on it. But unfortunately, it's ingrained. I can't understand why the politicians feel so obsessed that that's the only way they can stay popular is being tough on the war on drugs.
Yeah, and it came up a little bit during Jeff Sessions' confirmation hearings. But unfortunately, the future Attorney General is not very good at all, not only on the war on drugs, specifically on civil asset forfeiture. I don't think they grilled him enough on that. But actually, 84% of Americans oppose the taking of money and property before conviction, because you are not guilty of any crime, but you essentially have to pay to get all of your stuff back and your money back. And there is absolutely no due process there.
Yeah, I think that people aren't aware of this. I'm delighted that you're talking about it because a lot of people just don't realize what's going on, but it's a basic right that you are punished and you have to pay the fine and they take your stuff and you might be totally innocent. I mean, that is just so bizarre and so un-American. It's such a shame that the president jumped on the bandwagon there and became rather sharp there, but that's the way it is. But I think it comes from this basic assumption, which is deeply in opposition to the libertarian principle, that we ought to tell people what they should put into their minds and their bodies and what they eat and they drink, because we need somebody to take care of us, and that's where it is from. A lot of people get tempted to say, well, drugs are different, they're dangerous. Yeah, but you know, overeating is dangerous too, but we don't want the government telling us how much sugar we're supposed to have each day, and yet there's been authoritarians that try to do that as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, it seems as though we're clearly headed down that path, especially if we go toward single single-payer insurance option. But, I don't want to get distracted from this because I do think it's incredibly important, and I hope there are some liberty-minded people within the administration who have the presidency at some point and explain to him how wrong this really is and how it truly violates the Constitution on so many levels. And the federal government in 2014, which is the last year for which we have statistics, seized $5 billion in cash and property from people suspected of crimes. And when I say suspected, there was a Burmese Christian band that had all of their stuff taken because the arresting officer didn't like the answer that the driver gave when he was questioning him when the band was pulled over.
If you're rewarded for something, and that is taking somebody's property, and these police departments are rewarded, they get to keep the equipment and they keep the money. Here they either sell the equipment and get the money, it's off the books. And I cannot guarantee out of those billions of dollars of stuff they take that there's probably a fair amount of corruption there. There's no real audits of this stuff either. Yeah. So the principle is wrong dealing with the person they took it from, but then as it's extended, and they thought, well, we need to finance, we don't have enough equipment. They go out and buy tanks and all these other things to further advance their SWAT team approach when they decide, well, they might be smoking marijuana. We better go in there armed because these people are dangerous. So it is terrible that we have given up so easily on the basic principles of liberty and allowing people to make personal choices for themselves.
Well, as long as you're on the front lines, that'll never happen. Thank you so much, Dr. Paul.
That was perfect. Huh?
Oh.
That was perfect. Grant perfectly timed that, y'all.
On purpose?
It's just your awesomeness leaking through your pores.
Yeah, of course they are, John. John just sent me a link that, hang on here. It was John in Facebook just sent me a link. It's from Tennessee Star. Tennessee legislators are scared to fight civil asset forfeiture abuse, says Martin Daniel. Well, yeah, of course they are.
The police get up in arms. That's why it went to summer study now.
Yeah. Apparently, one of the last times they were supposed to have a public hearing on this, or maybe it was a vote, and it was in subcommittee, I believe. Apparently, they pushed the vote, and this is just what I've been told. It hasn't been actually published anywhere, so I have to make that disclaimer unless I defame someone. Allegedly, the reason why they pushed the vote is because officers got in the ears of legislators and said this is going to decrease our ability to prosecute child sex traffickers or something. I didn't understand that at all, dude.
Because they don't, those two things magically. No, it's because those things resonate with people and they're afraid of it. It's exactly. The fear. They're trying to make you afraid.
You don't even need that legal context. I certainly don't understand the legal connection, but you don't need to necessarily not understand the legal connection. The logical connection isn't even there.
And you remember there's been all kind of articles on what they actually use that money for, and it's not for policing. No, it's for, what is it, $1 million on catering or something, or whatever it was. It's crazy.
And don't get me wrong. Is that Tuesdays? All right, this will fit with whatever. I'll make it fit somehow. We'll figure it.
Well, make it
right now.
That's what she said.
Before we bring him on? Yeah, sure. Yeah, that'll be fine. Yeah. Well, it's got to fit now.
That's what she said.
Do you want me to bring you on and then play it?
No, just play it. Just power the music down and play it.
America, brought to you by His Security. In God we trust. All others, we monitor.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Real News on Talk Radio 92.3 FM and AM 760. This is this segment of Securing America, brought to you by His Security. I love that slogan. I do. Don't trust anybody except God. That's right. You know what I mean? All others we monitor. All others we monitor except God because we trust him. There you go. Hey, let's go to our great guest online right now. And, sir, before I get in with your intros and stuff, I really want to do this justice. Your last name, Bleasdale?
Bleasdale, yes. It's purely phonetic.
There you go. Bleasdale.
Hey.
Bradley Bleasdale talking about the raw milk situation. Now, this is an interesting background, sir. And rather than me just read this off the prompt that I have right here, I kind of want to do this justice. The last section that I have here, life, liberty, and the pursuit of raw milk, is a bold message on food, freedom, government, and government overreach. And I know you have an event coming up we want to plug, but before we get to all that, walk us through a little bit. This first paragraph, grew up on a small farm in Massachusetts. After college, you swore you'd never farm again, deciding it was better to stay with your life than stay in law school. You left law school in financial services industry. Now, walk us through a little bit of the decision to leave farming, go to law school, and where you are now, if you will.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Massachusetts. I was one of 13 kids, and literally right on the wrong side of the tracks in a very affluent town, and then you cross over the railroad tracks, and there we were. And, to give people a little back, I think we got running water in my house. I think I was in third grade when we got running water in my house, if I remember right, in the great state of Massachusetts. So went to college, and I'm like, the last thing I ever want to do is grow hay or milk goats again, or milk cows. We had cows back then. And then my wife convinced me to try to get into law school, which I did, and I was almost done, and it was just brutal on marriages. They say over half of Americans get divorced over the course of their lifetime. And in the time of law school, over half the people who were started married ended up divorced. So I could see where it was heading, and I said, you know what, I'm going to stay with my wife. So I did. And then I needed to make money, so I got in the financial services business. And exactly at 40 years old, I had a midlife crisis. And I'm like, when I was a kid, I liked to hunt and fish and do outdoorsy things. So we bought 50 acres of dirt up here in Tennessee and commenced the chase, as my daddy used to say.
Back to what you said, too, just a bit of anecdotal story on my behalf. In my law school, which I'll be frank with people is a straight-up well-known Christian law school, even in a Christian law school, they told us in the very first day of orientation, if you're not dating someone now, we would highly recommend that you don't start dating someone until after law school. Seriously, for that very reason, because you're never going to be home, you're always in the library, your significant other, wife or girlfriend or otherwise, is always going to be questioning what's going on. They have no idea what you're going through. It just is not going to work out. Anyways, so you came back, and for right now, midlife crisis, tell us the name of the farm. It's Fall Creek Farms, is that correct? And tell us a little bit about what you do over there.
Yeah, it's Fall Creek Farms, and then my son and his wife do the dairy cow side of things. The name of their farm is Orchard House Creamery, and we have a small raw milk dairy, and we also raise vegetables for farmers markets and CSAs and stuff like that.
All right. Now, what might think to themselves on a program like ours entitled Real News, talk politics and local issues and things of that nature? Sherry Voluntary is my guest right now and considers herself a
voluntarist.
Voluntarist. Yeah, these terms I can't follow, but this is actually a very, very proper segue into what we're talking about now. Let me just jump straight into this because this is what I want the primary portion of our time to be around. Life, liberty, and pursuit of raw milk is a bold message on food, freedom, and government overreach. Expound upon that a little bit and let us know. Okay, how do you get something from something as seemingly innocuous as a farm? With goats, milk, whatever else, and the creamery. How do you get from something like that? Now, listen, we're talking about government overreach. Where's the disconnect for me there?
Well, people will say as a sort of trite cliche, well, we live in a free country, and my response to that is, well, I guess you're not a farmer. In the free state of Tennessee, if I sell you milk that has been unpasteurized, I can go to jail or be fined for that. It's against the law for me to sell you milk from our farm. And the state enforces that. So, thankfully, a few years ago, well, I say thankfully with some a little bit of reserve, but they passed a law called a herd share law. So, if you buy into our herd of cows or goats, and now you own an undivided portion, kind of like a mutual fund for cows. Now, when I milk them and take good care of them and bring you your milk, I'm not selling you that milk. I'm delivering you your portion of the milk. That way you get nice, healthy milk, and I don't go to jail. But there is a bill being debated and voted on tomorrow, as a matter of fact, to ban raw milk sales in Tennessee, even even Amish or Mennonite farmers would be prohibited from sharing the milk with their neighbors.
No, just one point of clarification here, Bradley. Now, I'm sorry to interrupt there, but I just want to make sure I'm following along. This new proposed piece of legislation, I suppose, would that do away with the herd sharing? Because you just said before it already seems to be illegal to sell raw milk, and you get around that.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
It specifically prohibits herd share laws, which have been referred to as a loophole through which people can endanger their families and children, because, that's my goal in life, is to put people in danger by getting them nice, healthy milk.
I want to kill my customers. That's how I'll stay in business.
Yeah, I'll kill myself first. Pretty good.
All right, no, but with that being said, though, I mean, look, you're doing the farming right now. What is the likelihood then that someone's going to come onto your farm? Some I don't know, unknown customer, some seemingly, I don't know, blissfully ignorant customer that comes on there and doesn't know about pasteurized as opposed to unpasteurized. Is there a serious, legitimate risk to that?
In my opinion, there's not only not a serious, legitimate risk. Thursday night, I'm going to prove that not only is raw milk safe, that it's among the safest of foods you can eat. But if you just go on your favorite search engine and let the NSA deliver some information to you, it'll say there's no such thing as safe raw milk. That's from the CDC. Raw milk, according to the state Department of Health, drinking raw milk is like playing Russian roulette. According to the American Dairy Council, raw milk is inherently dangerous. So our 400 or 500 customers, however many there are, they're out there rolling the dice every week, just praying that, that they don't eat Bluebell ice cream and die from pasteurized milk.
Just one quick comment and then a question for you. Like, it's amazing that we've survived these thousands or millions, whatever your belief is, years on the planet Earth until pasteurization, because we were just, killing ourselves off every left and right with that raw milk. But my question for you, Brad, is that I just recently was at the State House, and I talked to Senator Briggs about this bill that is going through, and I haven't read it, so I'm gonna just put this out there. I haven't read it, but he was saying that this is just a reporting bill, right? This isn't going to stop anybody from doing the animal share. That this is just a way to make sure that people have to register with the state. They have to take a class, like a weekend class on, safety handling. And then it's also for reporting so that the health department can trace back to farms when there is an outbreak. They can find out where it's coming from and stop it quickly. So
sure.
what would you say about that?
Well, there's a few answers to that. First of all, the bill has had quite a few permutations thus far. It keeps changing, and even though they tell us it's dead, then the next week we get an alert that it's up again. As far as it just requiring, as soon as people say we're going to just require you to do something, that sort of rubs me the wrong way a little bit, because I like being a free man in a free country. But it doesn't do that. First of all, it would shut down every herd share until the course is developed. Which, like most farmers, if I go a week without income, I'm pretty much bankrupt, and they know that. The second thing is every farmer is going to report any incident that comes up right away. And let me tell you a short anecdote about that. 5, I guess it is, years ago now, there were reports all over Middle Tennessee that a raw milk dairy in Middle Tennessee was associated with an outbreak of cryptosporidium, which is a little parasite-like thing that can get into your intestines and make you sick. Well, that was our farm. And even after we proved beyond any doubt that our farm could not possibly have been the cause of the outbreak, which was 2 people getting sick, is an outbreak, by the way, that there was no way, because the cryptosporidium that can infect people can only come from adult cows, and only from calves. And we didn't have calves on our farm and hadn't for a good long time. So it wasn't possible. And yet if you research crypto outbreak in Tennessee, it's still reported. So there's a tremendous amount of over-reporting. So the outbreak associated, once again, quote unquote, with a raw milk dairy in Knox County, I guess it was last year or the year before, it's associated with it, but half the kids who got sick went to a petting zoo. They never drank raw milk. So they're going to require us to take a class, and that farm there in Knox County, it was a grade A dairy. They not only had been to the class, they'd been operating as a grade A dairy for years. So the way I would simply describe it is it's a solution looking for a problem that doesn't exist. And all it's going to do is burden farmers, increase, they're talking about the government paying for these classes, which, is simply going to increase the tax burden on other people. There's no reason for it. They act as though we're trying to make people sick and then not tell them about it. It's really ridiculous.
All right, Bradley, on the way out here, so I want to see if I can hang you through one more break. I want to give you time to push what's going on either on Thursday or an event coming up. And I also want to ask you some follow-up questions. But as Roz is setting this break up here, I mean, you just said that you had publications that were reporting on an issue that was actually untrue. I don't expand upon this too much if you're unable to or unwilling to. Have you thought about defamation suits at all?
No, because they never, they're pretty cagey. They never actually say Fall Creek Farms or Orchard House Dairy. So that makes it good. But I'll tell you what's really ironic right now. There's a pharmaceutical company in India pushing medication for livestock to prevent or cure crypto, and the citation they use is an outbreak in a small farm in Middle Tennessee. So I guess we're world famous now. We're promoting big pharma involuntarily.
Awesome, and I want to be respectful of your time here, Bradley. Can you hang through the break and do one more segment with us?
That'd be great.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll put Bradley back on hold here. Again, Facebook just asked the name of the farm here. It's Fall Creek Farms. The name of his, one of the dairies, Tennessee. His son's farm is, Orchard House Creamery. Deliver almost 500 gallons of raw milk per week throughout the middle of Tennessee. And that's what we're talking about today, a little bit of government overreach. Also talking about the idea of, hey, you can't sell raw milk, so we'll just do sort of herd sharing. Yeah, I was going to say shirt herring, which is it's the name of a band I'm listening to right now. Shirt herring up next. 8:20 in the morning. Hit this break. Be right back.
Legalize it.
Facebook, this guy's name is, hold on, I'll type it.
That was a great answer he gave. Because I was wondering how that, I thought, he's a politician, so I knew it had to be something more than that, because I've seen people who I trust getting upset about this, but I haven't had time to put into it, so.
Oh! Yeah, if you have any follow-up questions, just go ahead and jump in there. I was going to come back and ask him if he's always had a mentality or mindset of dealing with government overreach. We had these people in here one time who had a house, I want to say right off Alcoa Highway or something. It was like their dream home, like they built it up, put crazy amounts of money into it to make it their home, not just a house, And then obviously eminent domain came through, and TDOT bought out the entire house and just basically demolished the thing in front of them.
That's what started me on the road to libertarianism.
Really?
Was eminent domain.
Yeah.
I from Neil Bortz, the guy who wrote the fair tax book out of Atlanta. I thought I was a libertarian for a long time before I was, but that was what really got me started. How can this be in the land of the free, right?
A couple like that has told me too. Is they said they never really were too concerned. This guy is a football coach with the Israeli Football League. They're big into Middle Eastern missionary. They never really thought about American government overreach until it literally happened to them. So I kind of like to know for his sake, is this like a politically philosophical stance you're taking, or is it something that just was thrust upon you? Now you're like, bro, it has to do with my goat farm, and it's kind of whack type thing. Because
I guess my only other question would be for him to maybe elaborate on. I had a person, this guy who does a podcast, a friend of mine called Culinary Libertarian, and we talked about a book. He read it. I don't know if it was this one or not, but it was called Food Rights. He was saying you have a right to food, which I don't agree, but so he was saying the war on raw milk has been going for 100 years.
Oh, really?
People think it's modern, but it's actually not. It's been around for a while.
Okay. Yeah, ask him that.
Talk about the history of it.
Yeah, I'll come back in and bring us back up on the break. I'll kick it to you to ask that first, because I did kind of want to know too. Look, there seems to be conflation sometimes with the I don't want to say attack on raw milk, but the legislation behind raw milk, regulation of raw milk, and that being akin to like an old school snake salesman, right? That's putting rat poisoning in some tonic or something because it's supposed to cure itchy grout. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? You can make a similar argument of no one's going to allow you to sell literal rat poison to a baby thinking it's going to cure something, but at the same time, we're not talking about rat poison, no, we're talking about raw milk, so there has to be a distinction somewhere.
People have drank for millions of years. That milk is one of the most, humans don't, their milk isn't what
yeah, actually, Ray just said that a second ago, he said, don't drink raw milk, it's gross, drink breast milk.
I guess it's pasteurized in the female body, and humans maybe, in goats, goats, it's pasteurized and homogenized, I think, too. Maybe
Um,
not homogenized, but it's pasteurized in the goat.
Facebook, I've been trying to get her on here for a while. She keeps shirking me off, don't she? Facebook saying, please have Sherry Voluntary on more often. She's such a powerful, informed voice. John just said, in agreement with Eric, said, agreed, it's the smartest person you've had on in a while.
they like me. Like, I always expect people to hate me. Like, you know, you say anarchist and people just automatically go, what?
But I think her and I work well together, right? It's a bit of a yin and yang thing. Like, Nick and I work well together, but we tend to agree on about 95% of the things. Sean and I worked well together because we don't agree on everything, but the dynamic is just so great. But I think her and I work well because, like, up here you and I agree, and then when it's like most of the time, I think we don't.
We come from this. We might come from the same agreement or
Right.
disagreement from a different For me, it doesn't matter what the cost is, or like the if I win or lose. It matters what's like if it's moral. Like,
Right.
Is it you know, it's what tautological they call that?
Yeah. And for me, the winning and losing is it is important to me. And I know it sucks to say, but again, practically speaking, that's why I have a problem with the Tennessee Libertarian parties, because I'm sorry, y'all, but until you start taking yourselves seriously, I don't know if I can take you seriously. And I know the libertarian people are gonna balk at that, and I agree you should balk at that, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do. You know what I mean? When
Vote harder, Grant.
yeah,
That's what
vote
you're
harder.
supposed to
I
do.
know. But we're talking about like restricted primaries now and stuff. Like the Libertarian Party is being squeezed out.
They're trying.
Hey, bing, bing. Hey, welcome back to Real News, ladies and
Gentlemen, Daniel on Facebook is telling me that I want to be a libertarian, but I'm really a commie. Might be partially true.
There's a helicopter coming somewhere. I hear a helicopter.
Yeah, that's right. That was based upon a conversation that Facebook got off air. Just type in Real News Radio to your Facebook search bar. Let's go back to Bradley online here. Again, I want to go to the bottom paragraph here. It says, life, liberty, and the pursuit of raw milk is a bold message on food, freedom, and government overreach. At the end of the interview here, I want to give you time to plug any websites, anything to draw attention to this, any events you have coming up. Before I do, though, Sherry Voluntary here sitting to my right, hopefully a more regular commentator on this program going forward. She shook her head. Yes, she has a follow-up question for you.
I love this show, and I love to come back. I just have to say, you need to do something about that naked face before the next time I'm in here, because I'm highly offended.
They
but
love
anyways, so Brad, I loved your last answer. It was really great. But also, people tend to think that this, you know, what they would call the war on raw milk is a modern, you know, recent thing. Is how far does it go back? From what I understand, it's been around like 100 years.
Well, you know, it's an interesting thing. Back in the day, as they say, when milk was left out in the streets in open containers and there were open sewers, so you had flies buzzing around and landing in the milk, you know, obviously milk could get contaminated and make people sick. And there was an interesting confluence of, you know, people understanding germ theory, washing their hands, indoor plumbing, and almost all of those terrible diseases started to die away about at the same time, and actually previous to the mandate for pasteurization. And a lot of people think it comes about because they started homogenizing milk at the same time, where they break up the fat globules so that the cream doesn't rise on milk. And if the milk is not first pasteurized, that will make the milk immediately go rancid. So since the dairy industry went to homogenized milk, they had to have pasteurized milk, and they really wanted to sell homogenized milk so they could skim the cream, as the saying goes. And I think that's a big part of it.
Hey, and Brad, let me ask a follow-up question here, too. We've had this couple on before. I don't want to give their name out on air, but the guy is a coach in the football league called the Israeli Football League. His whole family is intimately involved in doing missionary work over in the Middle East. I preface it that way just to say they had a house that became their home. It was their dream home. They had missionaries that were staying in their home somewhere off Alcoa Highway. Maybe it wasn't Alcoa Highway. That's not necessarily important to the story. The point being is, eventually, TDOT came through by way of eminent domain and basically took it from him, wrecked the entire thing because they needed some off-ramp or something like that. Now, I bring that story up to say this is a situation in a family where they thought, I was never really too worried about government overreach prior to it happening to me directly. I was much more concerned about what's going on in the Middle East and working with Israelis across the culture and across religions. Are you the same way, or did you always have a mentality of government overreach is at the forefront of a lot of the way that not only I run my business, but my political philosophy? Or was it a thing that came on the back end of, now that it's happening to me, I truly see, even at the local Tennessee level, that claims to like to be small government, now it's happening to me type thing?
That's a great question. Well, as you can imagine, growing up in Massachusetts, and not to use the dreaded R word, but my dad was a World War II veteran. He fought in North Africa and in Europe. And he gave me a quote, and I'll quote this Thursday night. But he said one thing that I'll never forget. He said, America is unique in the history of the world in that it is the only time where the haves risk everything for the sake of the have-not. And I was raised, my dad was an intensely patriotic guy. He was a very blue-collar guy. And when I was a kid, we owned over 40 acres in Massachusetts that he had presciently seen would be worth an incredible amount of money someday because it was right at the conflux of three of the biggest highways in Massachusetts, but still very rural. And the state took our land by eminent domain to build a dam and dam up three rivers, so it was called the Suwasco Water Project, the Sudbury, Assabet, and Concord rivers. And they gave us, if I remember right, this was back in the 60s and early 70s, I think they gave us $420 an acre. And now land on that road, goes $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 an acre, some crazy number like that. So I'm well acquainted from an early age with stuff like that. But to me, I want people to be free, and I want to be free. And a big part of the talk I'm going to do is talking about, regulations carry the force of law, and we're just farming is one of the most regulated industries there is. It's just brutal, and those make barriers to entry, as people say. Well, I don't like those barriers to entry. I want young kids to be able to get into farming and try to make a living at it and succeed or fail because of what they do and not what somebody tells them to do.
Hey, and on the way out here, Bradley, again, I want to thank you so much for giving us some of your time here. And let's leave. I left this in particular at the very end. People tend to remember what's happened at the very end of these interviews here. So let me just ask sort of a three-parter here. Websites, Facebook, Twitter handles, anything people can go to get more information, the event coming up, what's happening Thursday night, all that stuff. Give us a quick rundown.
Okay, great. As far as the event Thursday night, I was invited by an organization that I have no familiarity with called Americans for Prosperity, but I met the young guy that runs it when I gave it the same speech down in Chattanooga. So that's this Thursday at 6:30 at 34 Market Square, Suite 201. If you look it up on Facebook, Americans for Prosperity events, it'll come up there. Our website is fallcreekfarms.net. And we're on Facebook at Fall Creek Farms TN. My son's website is orchardhousecreamery.com, and they're on Facebook at that. And because I didn't have enough to do, I started a school for self-reliance and survival skills a couple of years ago. We teach everything from urban farming to advanced firearms training and everything in between, wilderness survival. And that's sequatchyschool.com, like Sequatchie, the county down here, sequatchyschool.com.
Richard Esparza just sent me a message saying ask if we can do some shots of raw milk at the event. Yeah. Come on, Richard. Anyway, that's
absolutely. I will be we'll be practicing random acts of civil disobedience and drinking some raw milk.
I love it, man. Again, that's address is 34 Market Square, Suite 201. Tell us the time one more time, brother.
It's at 6:30 your time because I'm on slow time, as they call it here.
Gotcha. Again, sir, thank you so much for giving us some of your time this morning. We look forward to talking to you soon.
Oh, thank you very much.
There goes Bradley. 8:32 in the morning. Hit this break, and what do you want to do, Raj? You want to put the Abby Johnson interview here? Yeah, that's what we'll do. Come back with Abby Johnson interview from yesterday. Unplanned is the movie that's out in theaters right now. Unplanned, the story of the youngest clinic director in Planned Parenthood history, witnessing an abortion and what she describes as the writhing of a fetus, changed her now to be a pro-life advocate. I think it's still number 4 in the box offices. Don't quote me on that. My name is Mr. Henry. Sherry Voluntary next to me. News break. Be right back.
I like Tom Petty. I like him a lot too.
Yeah.
He's good people.
Yeah, he was. He was good. I mean, people who've dealt with this stuff, like they may not even call themselves an anarchist, but they, you know, real freedom. Position. I'm sorry. You know, everything he talked about is.
And I'm hoping that resonates a lot more with Tennesseans too, because you bring up like civil asset forfeiture or some of the stuff in people just don't. It's not grabby as they say, but hearing from a farmer, it's like, bro, yeah.
Yeah, because it's for one, like civil asset forfeiture. Well, it happens to a few people, and that's bad. But you know, overall, it's a net positive, right? Because they're so uneducated that they actually think they're trying to find drugs.
Well, and it's also the people that are telling you it's a net positive. Like, this is a culture in America in particular, but especially in the southern states, of, look, man, people seem to be born blue, if you will. It's a brotherhood. When you become a police officer, they are some of the most revered people in our culture and society, especially in East Tennessee. So if a police officer is telling you, yeah, we need that to properly enforce the law, and we need it to properly shut down crime, 90% of the population can say, okay, I take your word for it, right? Now, once you start educating yourself about it, then you run into another problem, because I actually went up to the Hill, not the Hill, but to the state General Assembly with Eric one of the first times to try and lobby some of this stuff.
That's who I went
and you run into legislators that like actually know what they're talking about, like a Judge Carter, for example, Mike Carter, I guess. I didn't like his opinion, but he shot me with some stuff that I didn't have a reasonable response to, and it's like, even someone that's well-informed, there are people that are a little bit more well-informed than you. It's just a tough thing to fight against, and people know at the best top level, they're always going to have the backing of police. And if you have the backing of police, you can pretty much do whatever you want to.
It's not that the police back them, it's that they back the police. The authority backs the police.
Yeah.
And so therefore, of course they're not going to go against their guys. Like when you go into a courtroom, everybody's a cop. Everybody sitting there is a cop.
Yeah.
Because if you have a public defender, that's a cop.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying.
If you have a judge is a cop, because they're all state agents and they're there to enforce the law. They're not there to do what's the right thing. Now you would say that the jurisprudence should be about doing the right thing, right? But it's not. It's about the law.
Yeah, and that's what I try to tell people a lot of times too is, and it's really difficult for officers to hear, and it's really difficult for people to hear about officers. But frankly speaking, officers are not trained to understand how to interpret the law.
Exactly.
They're just trained to enforce whatever the law may or may not be. That's literally all it is.
And they take an oath to uphold the Constitution, right, and defend the Constitution. Don't police officers take that?
Yeah, sure,
oath? Yeah. And yet they do these, instead of them going when they say, we're going to do a drunk driving. What do they call those?
Sobriety checks.
Sobriety checkpoint. Instead of saying, wait a second, I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution, and that's against people's Fourth Amendment rights. They go, we're just doing our job, right? Like,
yes.
And my friend has said that to me. My best friend who was a police officer has said to me, look, it's not my fault. It's the politicians. If you want to be mad at somebody else, yes, they have their part in it, but without you to enact violence against people for them on their behalf, they couldn't do what they do.
But let me ask you this, and this is great that Facebook's getting this now, because this is one of these segments that I love having you on for, which would be awesome for terrestrial live air too. Let me ask though, what the hell does the police officer do? Like, risk getting fired? I know you're going to say yes, but frankly speaking, if you've made a conscious decision to be an officer of the law, you know full well going into it there might be some stuff that you disagree with. And if you do disagree with it, it's then officer going to become some weird perverse calling to try and change it from the inside out. Not every officer thinks that. Some officers, yes, are your old school kids that bullied everyone in high school, couldn't make it in real life, went to a frat and just dicked around for too long and then became a police officer. Most of them are not. So some are really genuinely trying to do a good thing for the community, and they think to themselves, I think she's right in some sense. You would say so too. Me, I would agree with her much more than you, though.
Yeah.
If there are laws on the books, it's not the police officer's job to change those. It's the officer's job to enforce them. If they don't, they risk being fired. The legislature should change it, but...
If you take money to protect and serve, and yet you prey on the citizenry, you're morally culpable for that. I don't care who told you it's okay. You can tell me it's okay.
You're right.
It's
I agree
okay
with
that
that.
I go beat somebody up, but that doesn't make it okay.
That's totally true.
The authority that, they say, well, the authority says it's okay, so therefore I'm going to do it until it's not okay. And they think they're relieved of their moral agency. You are a moral agent, and you cannot ever give that away unless you are mentally ill or a child. You can't. It's impossible. Soldiers are responsible for the acts they commit in war. Police are responsible for the things they do in their jobs. So I understand, like, I would say soldiers are victims. They've been tricked by the system because there's no reason we should be going over there. They're taught that this is service, and it's actually very damaging. So I would say there's that, but it's your job to know what you're signing up for. It's your job to, if you take an oath, and this is what I was going to do. They take an oath in office of their job to protect and serve the community and uphold the Constitution. So yes. What's more important to them, their job or their honor?
Right.
That's what it comes down to.
And I hear what you're saying, because look, I'm getting dangerously close to working my way into Nazi Germany. You know what? I mean, seriously, what are you asking?
There's a 100-mile buffer where you have no Fourth Amendment rights whatsoever in this country.
And what do we hear from the old SS officers every single time? I was just following my mandate, right? I was just following my orders. It was a direct order that was given me from the top down, and whatever else. I had to kill the Jew because they told me to kill the Jew, right? No, I get it. Now, that's a bit of a conflation. It's a bit of a false equivalency.
It's not, though.
Well, it is a bit of a false equivalency because we're not to Nazi Germany yet. I mean, not anywhere near that yet. Now, we are on the...
They murdered a man over selling loose cigarettes. And then they wore shirts saying, I can't breathe, to his friggin' memorial. If that's not callous corruption of the moral human, I don't know what is. And they say it's okay because they have a shiny badge and a silly uniform.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm not angry yet.
Actually, we just... Facebook, I know you're loving this too much, but I got to play this Abby Johnson interview. This why we need to have Sherry and more on. Honest. What do you want to do, like 5 days a week now? I'm being serious.
Yeah. I'll just,
Leaving accidents, miracles, they don't just happen by chance. As long as my God holds the world in his hands, I know that there's no such thing as unplanned.
My name is Mr. Henry. Welcome back to Real News, ladies and gentlemen. Go right now to our fantastic guest online, Abby Johnson, a former Planned Parenthood director whose new film now is about the radical conversion about after witnessing an abortion. The movie is called Unplanned. It is in select theaters right now. I stress select theaters right now. A whole different story right there. She's the current founder and director, however, of this organization entitled And Then There Were None, the only ministry in the nation that helps abortion workers leave their jobs and find life-affirming ones. Plus, offers healing retreats, financial and emotional assistance, and counseling services. Since 2012, this organization, And Then There Were None, helped almost 500 workers leave the industry. And tell me if I'm wrong here. The website is abortionworker.com, abortionworker.com for more information. And then there were none. Abby Johnson, let me start by saying I'm sure you are absolutely exhausted right now with the number of interviews and everything you've done. In all sincerity, with as much candor as I can express, I truly appreciate you coming on our program this morning.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I'm so glad to be on with you.
And I don't want to give too many spoilers here. I would implore our audience members to go watch the movie and see this for yourself in person. But just so we can develop some simple context, and then I want to dive into the 7-level analysis of really where you're coming from. General opening questions, if you will. Talk us through the transition period from being one of the youngest Planned Parenthood clinic directors in the history of the organization, Employee of the Year, to now having this resounding advocacy for compassion and care for the mother seeking healing and struggling with these decisions and the pro-life movement. What was that transitionary period?
Well, I ended up, there were several things that happened over the course of 2009 to really question, it caused me to question what we were doing within the organization. But ultimately, I ended up leaving after witnessing a live ultrasound-guided abortion procedure, seeing a 13-week-old unborn child fight and struggle for his life, and recognizing that I could no longer pretend that there wasn't humanity in the womb. I could no longer conveniently disconnect a mother from her child and pretend like that child didn't matter or didn't have value. So I ended up leaving and have been trying to expose what's taking place inside of abortion clinics ever since, and have really tried to help facilitate healing for those who have been touched by abortion.
And let me ask you, Abby, and tell me full ahead of time, I don't mean to press you past issues that you're unwilling or don't want to go back into. Prior to working for Planned Parenthood, or maybe even during, am I correct in saying that you've actually had 2 abortions?
Right. Yeah, I've had 2 abortions myself. Yeah.
Now, when you witnessed that situation going on, the one that you just described, was there an immediate sense of some mental anguish that you were going through, aside from just seeing the, at the time, fetus or conjugation of cells, or maybe at the time prior to feeling that what you would have called that, then transitioning into seeing a human life struggle for survival? I'm sure there was some sort of, visceral sense that you saw it on a screen, but was there anything that you personalized? You don't understand what I'm saying of the decisions that you made in the past?
Yeah, not at that time. I mean, right then at that time, I really wasn't. I really wasn't thinking about my own abortions. I was thinking about that child that I witnessed being aborted, and I was thinking about all these other women who had come into our clinic seeking help, and we had just lied to them. And I really didn't come to process my own 2 abortions until after I had left the clinic.
And the reason why I brought that up is because I think it's a good transitional into what you just brought up in my next question here. I don't know if you agree with me or not. I have the conception that unfortunately it seems like Christians have largely dropped the ball in how to have a compassionate response on this issue. You know what I'm saying? It seems like the organization now, and then there were none, unless I'm wrong, seems like one of the primary motivating factors is all about helping these women, compassionately helping these women, reaching out. We're not standing in the picket lines here. These women are desperately struggling with this decision, and it seems like nobody that's asking them to make the alternative decision is doing it out of sense of. Is there some of that within the organization?
Yeah, I mean that's it. I mean, we always say that we're a pro-love organization, and which for me goes much higher than just being pro-life. We believe that when you love someone first, then life will naturally follow. And our goal really is to when we first started, and then there were none, I went to a lot of friends and people that I knew, and just said, hey, what do you think? I got this idea, and the answer from everybody that I talked to, Christian people, was, well, we think they're too far gone.
Wow.
So we just don't worry about them. And I just thought, what? Like, if you ever think anyone is too far gone to be reached by the hand of God, then we must not be serving the same God. I mean, look what he did to Paul, I mean, look what he did to King David. I mean, there's so many stories in the Bible that talk about God's radical transformation in someone's life. But that was what I realized, was that this was a group of people who the majority of the pro-life movement had cast aside as reprobates and people who were too far removed from God's grace. And we are showing people through love, through compassion, that is a lie, that there is no one too far gone for God's grace. And it's working. I mean, here we are, 500 workers who are now in a relationship with Christ, 500 of children created by God, his children, who are now in relationship with him. And I just think that has to make God so incredibly happy.
Absolutely. And, I heard you saying Glenn Beck's program one time before, too, that it just seems to be an unfortunate thing that if you're sort of standing outside picketing and making an example out of these women that are trying to struggle through this decision, what you end up doing, if you're screaming at these women on the way in, unfortunately, you end up making Planned Parenthood a safe space. Now, whether you agree with that or not, it does go, not you, but the proverbial you out there listening in the terrestrial.
Hey, we're going to have to cut to break, so...
Do you want me to bring us into break and then just kick us out, or how do you want to do it?
Yeah, we're going to have to stop this here, something like that. Just break.
As you pause it, I'll bring us back in saying, hey, we're,
I'm about to pause it.
Okay, cool. A more effective manner.
Sure. So,
What you've been listening to, by the way, this is Mr. Henry Sherry Voluntary sitting next to me here. I hope you've been enjoying so far our interview recorded yesterday with Abby Johnson. The movie is entitled Unplanned. Unplanned is in theaters right now. Hey, another cool story. This is safe till the end of the interview. I'll tell you this right now. The Unplanned Twitter account was shut down for God knows what. I mean, literally nobody knows. Twitter could give you some violation of their policies and procedures.
Called not being a leftist.
Okay.
That's the community standard of Twitter.
Sherry's just being honest about what the standard is. All right, so their Twitter account was shut down. It caused such a stink in the community that when it eventually was reinstated, the movie Unplanned actually has more Twitter followers than Planned Parenthood does, which I think is just a fantastic thing. 8:48, though, hit this break. Come back with the final segment of our interview with Abby Johnson. And then off air, Sherry Voluntary and I have been talking, and I'm going to bring this whole conversation up for the terrestrial audience to get. I really think you're going to love the 9 o'clock segment as well. Be right back.
Honestly, this is one of the other big problems that I have with anarcho-capitalism or voluntarism or whatever else is. It seems to have this presupposition that people prefer self-responsibility. That there's nobody out there that would rather be blissfully ignorant of something, frankly speaking, because it's easier.
So you're arguing for the lowest common denominator, like that. People will not be responsible if they don't have to be.
Of course, no, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
the whole premise of government is saying you don't have to be responsible. Just let me take care.
No, and I'm not advocating for that. I'm just recognizing that reality,
right.
And I'm recognizing that I would venture to say the vast majority of people prefer. It's a much more comfortable life, is it not?
Of course, they prefer it. But if they didn't have a choice, they'd have to do it that way.
They would, but that's what. But what I'm saying is, if you go to someone right now that's a total socialist, like let's say they're even a straight up communist, okay? They would prefer that the government gives them everything, mandated federal minimum wage. Fill in the blanks with all this stuff. I don't have to explain it to you, okay? You come to someone that's totally convinced of that. How in the world are you going to convince them? What's the benefit they would have, right? Is it a better life on the back end? You know what I'm saying? What's the Christian proposal to, hey, don't smoke weed all the time because God's going to give you something better? You'll have a better life over here than you will if the government's giving you everything.
I mean, they give you something, but it comes at a heavy price. And there's always a price, right? Milton Friedman said there's no such thing as a free lunch. Ever. And the price is your freedom. What's more valuable to you? Like, everything has a cost, and you make decisions. That cost in those situations is your freedom. And people think it's good. On the surface, it sounds great. Oh, it's great. But when it comes down to the fact that, say in Venezuela, where you can't go to the grocery store but on a certain day because the government tells you because there's rationing and blah, 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 like, then you go, wow, maybe this wasn't a good idea.
But see, that's my fear, is that it's going to take something as catastrophic as that to convince some of these other people.
But that's why I do what I do, right? Is to educate. Education is, like what he was saying earlier about, what was it? That, once people were leaving milk, open containers, open sewage, flies, all those things. They didn't have an understanding of basic cleanliness standards.
Right.
Science taught us that maybe we should close this up. There are germs and things and bacteria, and heat is not good for raw milk and things like that. We didn't need government to come in and they always do that. They come in on the tail end of something and then they take credit for it. Like they'll enact a legislation and say, wow, didn't we do a good job? When actually things were just moving that way. You look at literacy is the same way. The literacy rates were dropping like crazy. Illiteracy rates were dropping like crazy till the government, they came in and said, passed whatever laws.
Hang on, sorry.
Sure, no problem.
I'm wondering if she's going to come straight back in with the interview or what. I'm thinking she will.
I need to go pee if she does.
Yeah, you can go ahead now, actually, either way.
Sure. So if people go to abortionworker.com, there's a tab there that has resources on it. It says resources, and you can go to the principles link under resources, and there's a ton of information there. You can download different flyers, different things to help you, especially if you're out there on the sidewalk, to get information into the hands of these workers. But honestly, simply just being out there and saying, hey, there's help for you, go to abortionworker.com. We find that is incredibly successful because they don't even know that there's help out there.
Right.
So just letting them know that there's a safe place for them is really helpful, and that makes a big difference.
And Abby, I want to be respectful of your time here. Again, I'm sure I can't even imagine what your day looks like going forward, but 2 follow-up questions here for you. 10, I was just saying 10. Oh, okay. Is that right? Awesome. Okay. Yeah, well, there you go. I want to have a follow-up question here. Honestly, well, being somewhat vulnerable with my audience, I'll be vulnerable again one more time. When I've heard you tell this story before, I think only one occasion I haven't gotten choked up and been somewhat tearful. So I'm going to try and do this my best on air right now to not have this happen again. But for our audience members, for the Real News audience members, can you walk us through that scene? There's a scene in the movie where you find out that you're pregnant, and obviously one would presume, because this is correct, that this happened in real life. But there's a scene in the movie where you were pregnant, working for Planned Parenthood. Your boss comes in and says something to the effect of, "Oh, we can take care of that for you." Now, fast forward more than a couple years, and you're in a cinema watching this.
We still have like 10 minutes of this. So I don't know what you want to do.
I actually had not even thought about that. I don't know, it was a mom fail, I guess, but I'm sitting there in a film with Grace, with our daughter, and she's watching it for the first time in full length. She'd seen some clips, but had not watched it all the way through. And of course, I'm thinking, oh, well, seeing the ultrasound-guided abortion, that's going to be the hardest thing, or, all this kind of stuff. But that scene with that pregnancy test, and then the subsequent scene where I'm basically having to negotiate with my boss about my pregnancy, continuing my pregnancy, my daughter, I look over and she's just like in tears. And I thought, oh my gosh, she realizes that was her. Mm. And so after the film, I said, well, what do you think? And she said, we sort of talked about that scene, and she said, Mom, I'm just so thankful because I didn't realize that you had to fight for me. And I just didn't understand how easy it was for women to get an abortion. And we never, ever considered abortion with Grace, but, she has had to, we're, of course, there to help her with this, but, she understands that, she is missing 2 siblings because of abortion. And that it's just, it's a lot to process, but she's very mature, but it's a lot to process for a 12-year-old girl, especially when it's so personal in her family. But I tell you what, I tell people I'd put my daughter up against any.
We're probably going to be probably at about 14 and a half or 15 minutes. It's 20 total. So there's going to be 5 minutes that.
That'll be fine. I'll come back in at 9. You just finish the last 5 minutes, commenting on the first segment of it. Yeah, that'll be fine.
It's these little compromises, it's sin that causes us to shift our beliefs from truth to moral relativism. And, she embraces that truth. There's no gray for her. And, the Bible talks about us being more like children. I think in situations like this, moral situations, we really do need to think more like children.
Again, joined by Abby Johnson. Joined by Abby Johnson. Here's what we're going to do. We have a few questions coming up after this segment here, and actually some of the better questions are left till the end, so you definitely want to stick around for this 9 o'clock segment. If you just tuned in to Real News, what we're listening to is a pre-recorded interview from yesterday. It happened around 10:20 a.m. Facebook caught some of it. This is with Abby Johnson. The new movie out right now is entitled Unplanned. Again, you heard the beginning of the interview. If you don't know what Unplanned is, Abby Johnson was one of the youngest clinic directors in Planned Parenthood history. Awarded Employee of the Year. Just one scene in the movie too, where she comes home and she has blood on one of her shoes, and her daughter looks up to her and says, "Hey, what happened? Did you cut yourself?" And Something to the effect of Dada walks away and she turns to her husband, and her husband gives her this sort of scowling look, and she says, hey, nobody said it was going to be a clean business type thing. I'm paraphrasing slightly again. Anyways, we got to hit this break coming up for news, traffic, weather, all that. About a question or two left, maybe about, what do you say, Roz, like 5 or 6 minutes? Is that right? Yeah, something like that when we come back from this break. So this is what we're going to do. Going to hit this break right now. Like I said, news, traffic, weather, everything like that. Come back with the final segment of the Abby Johnson interview, and then myself and Sherry Voluntary will give a little bit of commentary. And then going through the rest of the 9 o'clock hour, Sherry Voluntary is joining me. We're going to be talking, goodness gracious, police officers, their role in society, civil asset forfeiture, a little bit more, all that stuff. Be right back.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize you would come back on the air, and I was just,
It's no problem.
No, I love doing this show. I think it's so fun.
I think my audience, I love having you in here too, because it constantly keeps me on my toes. And it's pretty rare occasion. The only time I've ever had anyone really push me is, Sean was really trying to push me one time on me making the claim that, which I believe is absolutely true. Technically speaking, nuclear energy is one of the cleanest forms of energy that we have. He apparently didn't agree. And yeah. And again, honestly, I have no problem with the Cal fart bags at all. I don't. I really don't. Do you know what that is?
The
trapping the methane.
Yeah.
I got no problem with the fart bags. I really don't. It's a very simple solution to shut up some of these climate change folks, and it could probably actually solve the problem. So I don't care.
If they're voluntary, sure.
No,
if they're mandatory.
No, that's what I'm
have
saying.
a problem.
I got no problem with this voluntary either. I mean, and if I don't know, if the government wants to allocate, if they don't want to build turtle bridges and they'd rather put bags on cows, like.
Look, here's a philosophically consistent way you could do that. Let the people who are concerned about it fund a charity that gives fart bags to
A GoFundMe? Friggin' crowdsource it? I don't know.
You crowdsource it. Pay for what you want. If it's that important to you, then friggin' pay for it. Put up or shut up. Stop demanding my money as if you own it.
It seems like Facebook loves you, so I'm going to have you back in more. I'm going to take a break. Here's Vice News, civil asset forfeiture.
I love that documentary. It's so
good. Here we go.
A law enforcement tactic called civil asset forfeiture allows officers to seize property, like cars or money, from anyone suspected of committing a crime. It's a useful tool for federal agents fighting drug cartels. But a new report from the Inspector General at the U.S. Department of Justice raises concerns about local police who work with federal task forces using the same tactic without proper training. In states like Texas, there are already growing complaints about asset forfeiture, and the issue is uniting two groups who don't usually get along: lawbreakers and conservative politicians.
Montana Sheriff's Office.
I got arrested back in March of 2016, and y'all are trying to seize my vehicle. I was just wondering where my vehicle is now.
I couldn't tell you where it went back then, but I couldn't tell you for sure where it is now. It's been so long. But I'll give you the number to the county attorney's office.
Okay.
They'll have information about it.
In March of 2016, Mindy says she was pulled over in Lampasas, Texas for flashing her brights, but that instead of issuing a ticket, the cop searched her car. What did he say when he came up to the car?
I smell marijuana.
And what happened after they searched the car?
Well, they found the 2 resin balls, and they first tried to charge me with heroin. And then I was like, open the bag and smell it. It's marijuana. And then he did it, and he looked at it, and he's like, oh, it's hash.
Mindy swears it was weed. The cops insist it was hash. But this isn't about how Mindy likes to get high. It's about her 2004 Jeep Cherokee, which the state of Texas is fighting in court.
I didn't even have enough to sell. I had no baggies, no scale, nothing in the car. And that would indicate that. Here's my dogs. I take them to Bull Creek all the time. The Jeep was big. They like to get in it. I could put the seats down.
After the cops took her car, Mindy couldn't get to work and eventually lost her job as a personal assistant. With no money coming in, she had to move out of her apartment and sleep on friends' couches. It's been a year, and she still doesn't have her Jeep back. The Sheriff's Department took Mindy's car through something called civil asset forfeiture, which allows law enforcement to seize property without actually convicting anyone of a crime. It dates back to the 1700s, when it was used to seize ships transporting illegal goods. In 1978, Congress expanded the practice so officers could hold on to drug money. They expanded it again in 1984, so cars, homes, and all other private property would be fair game. Today, Law enforcement say it's the most effective way to fight cartel leaders, who are really good at covering their tracks.
Making it more difficult for law enforcement to seize large amounts of the cartel's money only benefits the cartel's illegal enterprise. We don't want to help the cartel. We want to help the citizens and law enforcement.
Sheriff Evanson doesn't have to deal with the cartels very often. He's the sheriff of Rockwall County, which is about 200 miles from Lampasas. It's the smallest county in Texas, and it's nowhere near the border. But he's serious about drug crime.
Hurting the cartel by taking their assets away from them is just a benefit to the officers and the department and the citizens of our county and of our state.
What are the chances that something inside of one of these lockers was seized through civil asset forfeiture?
Not now, no. We haven't done anything like that recently.
The sheriff never expected to become a national spokesman for the practice. He says his department only seizes property about 3 or 4 times a year. But then this happened.
We've got a state senator in Texas that was talking about introducing legislation to require conviction before we can receive that forfeiture money. And I told him that the cartel would build a monument to him in Mexico if he could get that legislation.
Who's the state senator? You want to hear his name? We'll destroy his career.
It's unclear who exactly Sheriff Evanson was referring to, but the most comprehensive asset forfeiture reform bill in Texas right now was introduced this past December by State Senator Connie Burton.
When you've got something in place that allows government to not only seize, but potentially forfeit their property without a criminal conviction, something is wrong there, and I'm going to push back because we need to protect the rights of innocent victims.
Burton's bill would ban officers from permanently seizing property if the owner hasn't been convicted of a crime. It's created some unlikely alliances. Burton is a member of the Tea Party, but conservative and liberal organizations have both been vocal opponents of civil asset forfeiture for years. Did you expect before coming into office that there would be issues like this where you are very much on the same side as like the ACLU, as all these different, organizations that in many ways exist on the complete opposite side of the aisle?
Right. So certainly not before my first session, I did not know. But after being here and getting involved in the criminal asset reform issues, it was like, oh my goodness, common ground, that's what it's about. Let's work together and move forward for the good of everyone.
One of the biggest concerns for lawmakers like Connie is that the policy incentivizes cops to seize as much as possible.
That's my only thing too, yeah.
In Texas, police departments usually get to keep most of the cash and the revenue from selling cars. And it adds up. In 2015, Texas collected...
And that's one of my things too. I heard this guy from, I want to say Sweden. Please don't quote me on this Facebook. It's probably wrong. But one of these countries, Sweden or something like that, they had this guest on Joe Rogan's show. Maybe. Anyways, point being, he made the proposal. We were dealing with an opioid crisis, just like Tennessee is, just like America is right now. And then we tried everything. And the way we solved it is we basically legalized it. We regulated it, we legalized it, we made sure what they were putting in their bodies wasn't going to kill them, made sure that they couldn't overdose, that there was nurses on hand, and we saw an insane decrease. Now, we haven't gotten rid of the problem altogether, but it's far better than any other solution that has ever been proposed before. This is not me speaking, Mr. Henry. Mr. Henry speaking. It's this guy was saying, the point he was making, in fact, we were talking about before, the abortion stuff, is like, look, man, unfortunately, this stuff is going to still happen. And if it does still happen, there probably needs to be the best way to go about allowing or making that happen.
Laws don't prevent bad things. They're just punitive measures. Or, what's the money part? The damages.
Yeah.
You get damages, which is you should get damages for things.
You just want to play the intro, come right back in with where I left off at the last. Yeah, I figured you were. Okay, cool.
But yeah, decriminalization is what I'm for, but I'm okay with legalization first.
What's going on?
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Try your air work in this afternoon with...
No. Actually, I've ended up convincing my dad on this too. He was staunchly against legalization of marijuana.
So was my mom until I got into it many times.
He's not convinced of legalization of it right now, but he is become convinced of a decriminalization, or at least a...
Decrim is better than legalizing because there's no regulatory body over it. It's a plant, for God's sakes.
Right.
I mean, it's like saying poison ivy should be regulated because it kills people.
No, that's actually a decent analogy.
I've never thought of that before, but I'm going to have to develop that.
That is true. That's like the Cat Williams stand-up where he's like, it's a plant that grows in the ground. And if you just so happen to put some fire to it, it's like it's a little bit true. It's a little bit true.
I have a hard time with the people moralizing to me about drugs when they support a war where we're protecting poppy fields.
No, see, that's where you and I completely agree on that. If we don't agree on anything, I know we.
If you can say that that's not an at least ideologically dishonest position, you got problems with these people.
Yeah.
Hey, it's 9:08 in the morning. Welcome back to Real News, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mr. Henry, a co-host for today, contributor for today, whatever she wants to be called for today. Sherry Voluntary sitting next to me.
Are you doing your Ben Shapiro voice right now? What's going on with your voice?
I don't know. Hey, one more time, give them a plug real quick where they can find your stuff.
Well, I'm still developing my website, but you can go to YouTube. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Sherry Voluntary Show. I'm on the Sherry Voluntary Show on Facebook. And Sherry Voluntary. I'm all over there. I'm not everything.
I don't know if this guy wants me to say his name on air, but it's my show, so I'm going to. Anyways, Daniel Blanchett, right?
Yeah.
This is a guy that I think needs a shout out as well too. The amount of work and effort that this kid has put in. Sorry, most of the people that were normally associated with the speaking freely thing were kids, but Daniel's not. Anyways, Daniel, the amount of effort he's put into not just speaking freely, but a concerted effort to espouse these ideas in this community and help Sherry with her project. I think he is really worthy of getting a shout out here, man.
Absolutely. Daniel gives a lot of time and energy and money to causes. He helped Justin Lafferty, in his campaign, and he's a good guy.
Yeah, he is. Great guy and just a tech genius. Anyways, where we are right now in the show, you just picked up, if you just joined us, in the last two segments of the 8 o'clock hour, we're interviewing Abby Johnson. Now, what you just heard me ask her before in the follow-up question, too, that I asked her and said, hey, there's this scene in the movie where you were pregnant at the time, your boss comes in and says, hey, we can help you deal with that. We can take care of that for you, is what the boss said. And obviously what she meant is we can abort that child for you. Well, that child, when they saw the movie, that child now, it's her daughter Grace, was sitting next to her in the theater watching this all play out in front of her on the cinema screen. My mother was having a conversation with her boss about getting rid of my existence, my life right now, and asked her about what was that like for you to deal with that situation. This is the follow-up to that question. We'll go ahead.
The moral situations, we really do need to think more like children.
Again, joined by Abby Johnson right now, former Planned Parenthood director. A new film made about her life is entitled Unplanned. The organization she works for now is entitled And Then There Were None. And Then There Were None. Helped almost 500 workers leave the industry, not just Planned Parenthood industry, but others. The website associated with that organization is abortionworker.com. That's abortionworker.com. Based upon what your daughter said there, the question, not the question, but the statement she said, she didn't realize how easy it was to seek an abortion. During my first semester of law school, I had one of my common law professors, she's a female, she makes this argument to every single one of her classes every single year, saying something to the effect of, unfortunately, a third or fourth wave issue of feminism has essentially created a frat boy's dream world. Now, what she meant by that is the responsibility has been taken entirely off of the males. The onus is entirely upon the females because, after all, it is your body and your choice. But then that inevitably means that it's you. The women alone have to deal with the potential social ostracism. The women alone have to deal with getting kicked out of their communities, being ostracized and excommunicated from their churches, being looked at. It's all on the women. Everything is on the women. The men have nothing to do anything with it anymore. And now all of a sudden, like I said, it's a major win in the terrible misogynist win column. Now, the point I'm asking with that, bringing back what your daughter said, is she says it's easy to seek abortions. Do you find at all, though, from the women that you talk to, that there's almost a social pressure to seek that as at least a decision, if not a first decision?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot of people who, I can tell you when I had my abortion, I would love to tell you that I really sat down and thought about all of my options, but I didn't. I mean, my boyfriend at the time said, "Oh, no problem. We'll take you to have an abortion." And that was it. Once that was put into my mind, I thought, okay, problem solved, crisis averted. I think that's the way that a lot of women believe, because society has so normalized and sanitized abortion that it is often that first go-to when a woman has a crisis pregnancy. I mean, there was a study done by Dr. David Reardon. He's a psychologist, and he found that 64% of women feel coerced or pressured into having an abortion. That's not choice.
Wow.
That's why the whole idea of being pro-choice is such a lie, because there's never a time where a woman walks in to have an abortion where she says, well, I'm just so excited to exercise my right to choose today. Women have abortions because they feel like they have no other choice. And that's where we really have to come in the pro-life movement, is to let them know that there are other options, there are other choices, and that we are there to help.
Again, one final time, current founder and director of And Then There Were None. This is the only ministry in the nation that helps abortion workers leave their jobs, find life-affirming ones, offers healing retreats, financial and emotional assistance. And final question here for you. Let me ask this. Why did you take this calling on? I mean, the spiritual target that you painted on yourself right now is one that, quite honestly, I would probably not wish upon my worst enemy. Additionally, I'm sure the public backlash must be overwhelming. Where do you find the motivation and to continually deal with this charge placed upon your life, this calling? Is it how you see it's benefited the women you've saved? Is it something you're getting from God? Is it a coalition of both of those? I wouldn't do this. I'm not strong enough for this. You know what I'm saying? Where do you find that?
I think it's definitely just grace from God. I mean, I know that's like a Sunday school answer, but really, God has placed this calling on my life, and for whatever reason, it's not what I wanted, but it's what He's put there. And I have prayed before, God, please shut this door. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be at home with my family.
Right.
I don't want to travel, but he does never shut that door. And I made a promise to God that as long as the door is open, I will continue to walk through it. And I have to be faithful to that promise that I made Him. And it's not always easy. I sacrifice a lot of time away from my family, but I have to believe that in the end, God will reward that sacrifice. I see these children's lives who are being saved because of this message, not just my message, but just the pro-life message, women who are being healed, abortion workers who are coming to Christ. And I just think, how can I stop? How can I stop doing this?
Again, Abby Johnson has been joining us this morning. I cannot express enough how much we appreciate you coming on the program.
Of course, and I certainly don't think they have the right to.
Said a number of times.
Oh, it's about to go out and play the music, so I'm just going to go to break and we'll come back.
Okay.
For information about the film and where the film is is playing near you, it's playing in 1,700 theaters right now. They can go to unplannedtickets.com and find out where they can see the film. We need people going out and watching the film. We need the box office. We need the numbers to continue to be high. We need the film to continue to do well so that we can keep it in the theaters and keep expanding theaters as long as possible.
Yeah, and continue to ride that wave. I heard a story about that they shut down the Unplanned Twitter account, and they caused such an outcry that when it finally was reinstated, apparently the Unplanned Twitter account now has more followers than the Planned Parenthood Twitter account does.
Yes,
which I just
amazing, yes.
I think that's absolutely beautiful. But again, Abby Johnson, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Real News, and we appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, there goes Abby Johnson. We'll hit this break and be back with more.
All right, Facebook. That's the end of the Abby Johnson interview. Elijah, what's up? All right, when we come back, it's gonna be a kind of a short segment. I'd probably just talk I don't know if I want to rehash the Abby Johnson interview more, so I'll probably just if we get callers on it.
Abortion, we can talk about it. We
can talk about abortion.
Ask Facebook. What do y'all want to talk about, Facebook?
Facebook, what y'all want to talk about? You want to do some commentary on the Abby Johnson interview? You want to get into the police overreaching stuff Sherry and I were talking about?
that might be better served to start after the bottom of the hour break, just because it's a longer break between. And that's such a.
All right, well, that's what we'll do then. We'll come back and I'll just lead us through some commentary for, it's going to be, like I said, a sort of a short. We'll do the 9:30 and then from 9:38 to whatever, we'll get into that. I might actually start off by making a plug for this Pete guy. Well, not plug for, but plug this Pete guy one more time, pay attention, then...
That was, I think, we probably should.
Here's what I'm talking about, by the way, so Facebook knows what I'm talking about. This is the guy that I'm starting, should I say be afraid of? Not afraid of. I'm just making the mark right now. I'm putting my line in, my stake in the flag that I'm right as of today. I said this yesterday, so as of April 8th, 2019, when this becomes correct, I'm going to say I told you so later on. Listen to what this guy's saying. See what he's saying? He sounds like a mandolin when he speaks. I'm just messing. Here, hold on.
People want to know that they're going to be okay. There's a need for security. It's not just that a lot of jobs are changing. It's that when your job changes, your identity gets thrown into disarray. And I think we've experienced that very acutely in the industrial Midwest. And I think when that happens, that can also leave people vulnerable to radicalization. I'm not saying that we can excuse racism in the name of economic anxiety. I'm saying that some of the anxieties that have arisen make people ripe to be targeted.
Who's sharing, what are you talking about, Knox Crime Cancer page?
Daniel asked him to share the Knox. He said the post, but it's the page. It's not a post. He's asking him to share this post. That page is cancer, in my opinion.
What's in the Knox Crime page?
I mean, it's people making excuses for every bad thing cops do, basically.
Is that the reason why it wants to be shared?
I don't know why. That's why I asked him, because I'm not sure why. He said share this post, but then it's the page. I think maybe he grabbed the wrong link or something, which is unlike Daniel, but he grabbed the wrong link. Maybe he just wants more actually liberty-minded people in there. I don't know.
Maybe he's just trying to
draw
draw
those
attention
people all the time.
Yeah, mine went to the Knoxville crime of East Tennessee as well.
I mean, I've actually talked to people in that page where I've said criminal asset forfeiture means the police can just take money from you on the side of the road. And they're like, well, so?
Oh, wow.
That's the law. Blame the politicians. Like,
Hey, welcome back to Real News, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mr. Henry. I just said the name of this program. It's Real News. We got a few new people on Facebook here because this is one of the other reasons why I like bringing Sherry in, because I get to steal some of our audience members every now and then. Steal's not a good word.
There's some that have been on my show that are in this like almost every day.
Oh, really?
Every
See,
time I'm
this
in
is
here.
why, again, this is why I think we've been sort of just casually eggshell dancing around this. But in all sincerity, I'm going to do this on air with Sherry. I would like to have you on much more often. I think you and I play well with each other, honestly. And I think our philosophies play well with each other because, like I said before, we start in some form of agreement and then have a tendency to completely disagree once we're actually but it's healthy, not just for you. It's been extremely healthy. Sherry will tell you too. I used to call her probably more than she would want, but I used to call her sometimes and be like, look, I'm dealing with this situation right here. How would an anarcho-capitalist? Because I want to hold myself accountable to figure out like what do I really feel and how am I really come about this. I think it's extremely healthy. I know it's been healthy for me, so I'm thinking it's going to be healthy for the Real News audience. Elijah just said in Facebook though. We were trying to figure out what topics to move to. Next, I'm going to comment on a little bit on the Abby Johnson interview. But just to make a point in case we forget about it, saying I'm just tuning in. Elijah said I'm just tuning in, so I might have missed it already. Had about like a college admission scandal. It's fine for the government to manipulate a college entrance, but when people do it, it's criminal. Yeah, dude, that's totally true. That's a little bit true.
Elijah he watches my shows all the time. He's a great guy, smart guy.
If you did just join us, by the way, we just got done with that interview from Abby Johnson. And again, Abby Johnson, just to catch people up, the movie Unplanned, it's in theaters right now. I want to say it's still hovering around 4 or 5 in the box office, which I said this point yesterday. Some benefactor somewhere missed out, honestly. I mean, if you don't think to yourself that abortion is not going to get at least half of the population into theaters, and I don't care if you agree with abortion or not. Right. If you're just business-minded, fund that, man. That's a quadruple return on your investment right there. You know what I'm saying?
Daniel Blanchett always tells me, because I say, people get mad at me if I say that, and he's like, just be yourself, because most people listen to get mad. Like,
no,
that's the thing, whether you're against abortion, you're going to watch that.
I think the most recent stat I read was that 38% of Rush Limbaugh's audience listens to him solely for confirmation bias.
That's exactly what he tells me.
Just to prove that he's an idiot? I mean, honestly. Before we get back into a little bit of commentary here, Ray has a good question for Sherry. Not sure what that's going to be on, if it's a Abby Johnson interview or not. Again, one more time before I go to Ray here. Hang on, buddy. That Abby Johnson interview, I'm trying to make that as shareable, if that's even a word, as possible. It's on the Real News. Anything I'll talk about with social media, just type in Real News Radio. It usually comes up. It's on our Patreon account for MP3 shareability. It's the pinned at the top of the Facebook page right now. It's on our YouTube page. So anyways, Real News audience, let me know what else you need if you want to share that interview, and we'll make it shareable. But Ray, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Henry and Miss Voluntary.
Hey, Ray.
I've been listening all morning. Great show. And I've seen all the downfalls of our current leadership in our judicial system. I was just wondering, to have some kind of counter to it, if you were the governor of our great state of Tennessee, how would your courtrooms be ran? I'm thinking, the lawyers would be briefed in coloring books, and the police, everybody would be armed inside the room, and the police would be handing out condoms and candy.
I'm not sure what the question is.
I guess let me try to interpret Ray. I'm not sure if she's following or if I'm following what the situation you're setting up here. I think the initial question, if you were governor of Tennessee, I think her response might be, and I'm speaking for her, there would be no governor of Tennessee possibly. But with that being said, Ray, are you asking the question of, anarcho-capitalism gets a bad reputation for that word anarchy, but are you asking the question of it would devolve into pure anarchy? There needs to be structure for something, or are you going in a different direction?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out to maintain peace. What would she do?
I hear you. Okay.
I mean, I believe in common law. Common law has been around. Common law is not the purview of the government. It's just government has a monopoly on it in this country.
I think he's focusing on, too, what would be then the enforcement mechanism of that common law? Would it just be...
Yeah.
Right.
Then we have contracts. You have private police, private law. Those are our concepts. David Friedman, who is Milton Friedman's son, has done a lot of really great work in this, and there are many, many YouTube videos. It's kind of, it's one of those subjects that's deep to go into, but I don't believe in the state having monopoly on that. That doesn't mean that there's not other forces that should carry out that. Look at the Wild West. We've had examples of this in our own country. They call it the Wild West. It wasn't really that wild, but when you had a sheriff, and when he needed extra help to go and grab someone who had been accused of doing something and bring them to trial, what did he do? He deputized people, and they went and got them and brought them. They had a trial. You don't need a monopoly of government to do that. And I know that was still under the purview of some kind of state structure, but there have been plenty. Take Ireland. For about 2,000 years, they had basically an anarchist system. They had common law. They had a structure they had judges. They had, for settling disputes. Look at the Old Testament. There was Judges is a book of the Bible where, it wasn't necessarily a state's structure like we have now. It was a religious law
and see, this is where I think Ray's come from too, and where this is a point where Sherry and I diverge, and this would be a great segue into probably we're going to bring up at 9:30 as well, because it's on this topic. But I've always thought, one of my practical problems with what we're talking about is if you make a situation of law enforcement based upon the voluntary aspect, because that's what we're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what John said on Facebook. Eric said, I like candy, and John said, yeah, I like candy too, but should my taxpayer dollars be used to pay for your candy? I think what we're talking about is if you allow individual communities to say, pool their money together, right, and then pay for a privatized police force. Mm-hmm. The affluent areas in Knoxville are basically going to have Blackwater and Khaki and Titan walking around. These privatized, that crime is never going to be committed. Whereas some of the more indigent areas, some of these socioeconomic areas that are not exactly, up to say to the affluency of someone else. I don't even know if they'd have an enforcement mechanism. I don't know. It would basically would it be? And again, I'm speaking in hyperbole for a point. I get that. What I'm saying is though is the lower economic area is going to turn all of a sudden into mob gang rule?
I don't think so because in a society like I'm talking about, most people would probably be armed. So you're going to have a lot less crime. The problem right now is that, even in the great state of Tennessee, as you called it, people get pulled over and they get taken to jail for having a firearm.
Oh, yeah.
They're under suspicion for carrying a weapon that is their right to defend themselves with. I think there's a lot more problems created by government than are solved. Do I think that under my, ideal system that there would be no more crime and no more suffering? No, that's the nature of life, right? We're never going to make utopias don't exist. But, I would really, I really encourage everyone that if you're interested in this, which everyone should be, go check out David Friedman's work. And maybe one day we could do a show just on this topic because it's in depth and there's a lot to it. But really what it comes down to is when you go into a court system right now, it's not you versus you. It's the state versus someone. Because when someone damages a murder grant, the state has a case against them because it believes that grant is their property and they've been damaged, not the family of those people.
And Ray, we got to hit this break here, man. I'll give you the last minute though to comment on what we were talking about.
Yeah, it's a wonderful comment. I was really enthralled in how she was approaching that our justice system is perverted, and they're taking things out of context to almost, it's like job security. And I was wondering if I was taking the job security away from the lawyers and the officers, who would we put in their place? And the common law is great. I really, really would like to get it, but to get back to our courtrooms, when somebody broke the law, you shouldn't need a lawyer to understand the law.
Yeah, I agree with that, Ian. Yeah.
The law should be simple.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, it's job security for people like me, though, man. You know what I mean? That's why it is.
You've got plenty of jobs, Mr. Henry.
Why you have the right to defend yourself is because laws were supposed to be understandable by the common man.
Yeah. Because proclamations in general are supposed to be understandable by the common man. That's what a proclamation was. You put it out in the town square, and everyone's supposed to understand. Oh, that makes sense. It's the law, and it has to be understandable enough for the common man to reasonably know, maybe I shouldn't do that thing that it's telling me not to do. Well, today's day and age, dude, read me a piece of legislation recently that's been passed where your common man can think to themselves, I fully understand everything that's happening in that law right now. It doesn't happen. Ray, buddy, as always, we appreciate the call, man.
Great show. Thank you, y'all.
Thanks, buddy. Let's hit this news break right now. Come back with Stimpy's call on civil asset forfeiture. I know people like this topic. I'll be right back.
Never heard this one. Roz found a Sherry song I haven't heard.
She finds them all. Actually, you were bringing that before about the state's interest in prosecuting someone.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about that all day long as to what they teach in law school as to why that is. But I randomly stumbled across, it's the weirdest thing. There's this event in North Carolina, in one of these mountain towns called the Woolly Worm Festival. And it's exactly what it sounds. You find these little woolly worms in the ground, and then it's a whole festival with rides and everything else.
Weird.
Devoted to putting them on a string and crawling up. Anyways, but there was a tent there that was talking about rights for the victims of murder victims, and I was like, the hell are y'all talking about rights for them? What does that even mean? And I went to talk to them for a minute, and they're like, well, look, this is basically the whole thing started when someone in California, their father was murdered, and the daughter and the mother ran into the man that had murdered their father in a supermarket and had no idea that he'd been released. And it immediately hit me. I was like, oh, yeah. Because the state's prosecuting and the victim's family have no idea when the hearings are held. They don't know what motions are being made. They don't know when release date is. But alternatively, in a civil suit, if I'm paying my attorney, dude, he calls me we're doing this motion right now, this is going to be the problem, you need to be here at this particular time, this is what the judge said. They keep you insanely informed because you're paying for it, right? And I thought to myself, like, dude, I don't know how I feel about it yet. because I've been coached to feel the other way about it, but I was thinking, that's such an insanely interesting concept. Why shouldn't the victims' families have full right to understand, it's my dad that was murdered. I should probably know when my dad's murderer is getting out so I don't haphazardly run into him in a supermarket.
There's
you know what I mean?
also there's a particular case, and I can't think of what it was, but the family didn't want to prosecute the person who had murdered.
Oh, that happens all the time,
and
right?
The state goes ahead and does it. Yeah, and it's not just murder; it's lots of different
Right.
things. And so, that's the problem with a legality mindset rather than a common sense, what's actually right mindset.
Mhm.
And I think, the biggest thing that's overlooked with the government having a monopoly on law is that it's a conflict of interest. When you go into the court system, the judge is a state agent, the prosecutor's a state agent, even the public defender is a state agent for sure, and even your private lawyer is somewhat a state agent because they have to register with the state to be able to practice, and they can't do anything that would anger the state or they'll lose their livelihood.
Right, that's true,
So you're better off with a private, attorney, but they're not really private because they have to register with the state.
No, and that's why, if for nothing else, the statue that I love above all statues, obviously, is the blind justice. And it's meant to protect this virtue, which obviously we're losing and obviously is never going to be fully enveloped. But if justice truly can be blind, and we constantly strive towards that virtue, then everything you said doesn't necessarily matter as much as what I'm saying is, yes, that is true, they're all state actors, but what they're acting towards is this blind sense of justice that's based upon the voice of the people through the legislature. No, I don't know.
They're
See,
not.
that's what I'm saying. That's where the question needs to be asked constantly.
They're not. I mean, it's not even a question because they're about enforcing the laws that they don't make. The legislatures make them. They have their own interests.
But isn't that the reason why the system works, though? Isn't that the reason? Because they're invested in a sense of in enforcing the laws that they didn't create. But that doesn't necessarily imply that you didn't have a hand. The people didn't have a hand in creating those laws. If it truly is a representative republic, and I elect someone to be my representative,
I don't know any. But see, that's the thing. States don't have rights, right? They have delegated powers. And your representative has a delegated power, and they shouldn't be able to make any law that says they can do something or the state can do something that you can't do because those powers come from you. So if the state can tax you and put you in prison, guess what? You would have the right to do that as well. It's an illegitimate right that they have. So they're working off of illegitimate.
See, but that's the frustration behind the whole thing is because the whole idea of the state having what they call plenary power, the federal government has enumerated powers. The federal government can only do the things that we tell them they can do. It's supposed to be that way, right? Commerce Clause screwed all that for sure, but the state has plenary power where basically they can do anything in the world aside from the few things that the people tell them they cannot do. Mm-hmm. So in my understanding, if the state does something that people don't like eminent domain, for example, mm-hmm. I supposedly, on the books, there's a process by which a state could remove the power from eminent domain if they really wanted to. Now, it would take a big effort, a huge effort, but that's not to say that it couldn't be done. Even at a federal level, if the people really wanted to coalesce together and say, we don't like the idea of the government coming in because the government is us. We are the government. So we therefore have the power. We're not. I'm just saying. What I'm saying on paper, the Constitution has provided. It might be in practical sense. Now you're becoming me. Is what I'm saying.
No, it's true. If we the people are the government, then everything the government does to us is consensual.
It should be right. That's what I'm saying.
But no. We can.
But it is though.
300 million people are not a collect. Like they're never going to agree on how things should operate.
No, you're never going to. But that's why. But that's why we have a representative republic as opposed to a democracy. But in principle, anything that's on the books right now, technically, the representative republic has agreed to. Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't work. It doesn't work. You can say it worked somewhat, but cancer is bad, and having a cold is better than having cancer. But either one of them good. Just because one thing is better than another doesn't make it good. It just makes it better than the worst option.
Government. Getting used on some
7 in the morning. Welcome back to Real News. I think Facebook, unfortunately, is probably going to get a better program than terrestrial audiences today. By the way, there's about 5 people in a row that just told me, Sherry's right, just listen to her, Mr. Henry. This is why I think we need to have you on more often.
I love these people.
Most of my end tends to lean hard libertarian, and I'm just not there yet. Now, granted, I've been somewhat indoctrinated / brainwashed through law school. I just can't get myself there yet. But
can I say though, like you used to call, I mean, I loved those conversations we would have.
Yeah.
And I think you've moved closer to me in many ways since we've met.
And again, this is I try and tell people I'm being honest about this. You may not think I am, but hopefully Sherry can attest to this. One of the greatest virtues I find in all of human existence is a willingness to change your mind, a willingness to admit when you're wrong, and when presented with better factual information, with information that makes more sense than what your previous worldview was, you have to drop your pride, admit that you're wrong, recant, and move on and progress. Otherwise, you're never going to grow as a human being. Now, with that being said, there are some certain things that I think I'm settled on that Sherry Voluntary and I have been talking off air. I'm going to get to Andy and Stimpy here in just a second. This whole conversation, though, started with something to the effect of a comment that John or Bob or Kelly, I forget who made this comment in Facebook before, but it got us talking, obviously, about civil asset forfeiture. It got us talking a little bit about what we're talking about right now, and got us talking a little bit about Sherry likes to make a fairly... Callers, hang on for me here, because I'm sure this can open up a real can of worms. Sherry likes to make a fairly controversial statement sometimes that there's no such thing as a good
cop.
Okay, you say it. I'm not going to say you say it.
No
Yeah.
such thing as a good cop.
All right, now explain what you mean by that.
What I mean by that is that, so I'm not saying that police officers in their personal lives are bad, although there is a really high rate of domestic violence, but that's a separate issue. I hear you. I can't let them completely off the hook, right? But I mean, I know people who are police officers. I have people in my family. I know a lot more police officers than y'all might think. But in your carrying out of unjust laws for money, that makes you not good.
See, that's where I immediately diverge from you, though, and that's what started this whole conversation for Sherry. Now that Facebook's caught some of already, is that when you're carrying out of unjust laws. Now that immediately posits a subjective component for me as to what makes that law unjust. Now, it might be unjust in your mind, but in my mind, we have to have some version of collective agreement as to what is just and what is unjust. There has to be some objective nature, and in my mind, that objective component is the legislature.
No.
So if the legislature, through my representative republic, has come together and we've all coalesced in this little community and said, most of us agree that this is a just law. Therefore, we're going to ask these people to enforce a just law. I'm not sure, because a few people would say it's unjust. Now, in my opinion, if a few people think a law is unjust, they have the onus to then go prove to the majority of people that it is unjust to change that law. And my situation is, we have very clear mechanisms in all versions of government. Eminent domain is a perfect one. I don't know a single person, myself included, for pretty much any given reason, which I know is a strong statement, but for any given reason that would prefer eminent domain as opposed to any other option. With that being said, if you want to get it off the books entirely, frankly speaking, there's a way you could do it.
Right. But, all these people that you claim aren't for it, it's still there. And it's still enforced. And they still come and, point a gun in your face and take you to jail if you, do things that you should have the right to do. Like, so the reason there's, no good cops in that way is that you are always a moral agent.
She said a moral agent.
A
not
moral
right,
agent. Yeah, right. Not a moral agent.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry. You can't give away your moral agency, no matter what. So if civil asset forfeiture, let's talk about that, because that's a clear violation of theft. Like, we know theft is wrong, right? Just because an authority says, no, you have the right to take money from people without a trial, without really anything but your own suspicion, which leads to the corruption of, the person, police, which are taking $45 from people and calling it drug money.
Sure.
So those kinds of things, that's you're responsible for. It doesn't matter whether the law tells you you're right or not. And this is where it really comes down to, though, until there are enough police officers standing up against the bad ones, there are no good cops. Because if you're not standing up and saying, this is not right, what this police officer did, he put your you-know-what on the side of a gun and murdered a man in a hotel room, and that was ridiculously, or having these Punisher thin blue line stickers on their police cars. That's a vigilante. The Punisher is a vigilante. This is how these people view themselves, right? They have a warrior mentality, not a public servant mentality. They're trained to have it. And then they're excused from it by people who say, well, blame the lawmakers. But you know what? If lawmakers didn't have the violent arm of the police to do the things that they do, they couldn't make laws that tell you what you can put in your body.
No, I understand what you're saying, Cher, but to me, at the end of the day, it just seems like a mere semantic game. It seems like all we're doing is moving the goalpost of legislating into a different purview of where we should legislate. Now, this is what I'm saying. Every single time we have some police brutality situation happen, which does happen far more often than we realize or even want to account for.
They kill more than illegal immigrants do.
This is what I'm saying. So it does. I'm not saying that this isn't happening. What I'm saying is when you inevitably get to the judicial system and people want to claim, like, we have this system that's wrought with fraud, and someone just said in Facebook a second ago, here, hang on, wanted to say, either way, it doesn't matter. You think that the law is applied objectively. I don't remember who. Yeah, Chris said that you think the law is applied objectively. It may not be, but it should be. And that's the principle that I'm saying. And this is what I'm saying, okay? When a police officer goes to the courtroom, there is a different standard of legal obligation and legal culpability that a police officer has when he's under the scope of his employment than an average citizen does. Now, sure, he may not like that, and I may not like that, but the point I'm making is that is on the books, and there is a way that we already have to change what's on the books. Now, the time to change what's on the books, in my mind, is not left up to 12 random individuals through jury nullification. It should be much larger than that.
But the jury nullification is the last stop. That's the people. That's not what it's... So the problem is that the whole state apparatus can make laws that go against your natural rights. And then they back themselves up. So when you go... This is why a police officer can rape a 7-year-old and get probation.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, yeah.
Because he's a state agent.
Yes.
Right? They're all they protect themselves. This is why if someone is a good cop, they get fired. Right? Because there's an example locally where a man a few years ago arrested the sheriff who was drunk driving. The sheriff stayed the sheriff. He lost his job. Mm-hmm. So there are issues here regarding the fact that there's a force that can be enacted and a standard that the state having this, what's it called? Where their own interests are served.
Oh, yeah,
in this.
Sure, yeah.
Conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Sorry, my brain knows. There's a conflict of interest when it's trying its own agents. If you had private law or separate law, not government monopoly law, then you're actually going to get that. And these thin blue line people who support the police in everything they do, they don't hold them to the highest standard, which they should be. If you have the right to put a gun in my face, you have the right to throw me in a cage, you should be held to a very, very high standard.
I agree. And this is the question I'm asking is why are they then not held to that standard now? We're creating this situation but the state itself is now entitled this thing like it's some sort of weird untouchable entity. That is not a government of the people, by the people, for the people, and I believe we still are.
There's a collusion.
There's
a collusion between the lawmakers and the police. They need each other. It's a predatory gang.
But just because the system hasn't become corrupt doesn't mean that the system is incorruptible. We still have a system that, dude, if we wanted to elect 100% anarcho-capitalists right now that could just destroy the whole system, we could and possibly should. I mean, the first time I met Tim Burchett, I met him in an elevator. He gave me a little fist pound or whatever. He said, "Hey, I'm Mayor Burchett." I was like, "Oh, cool, man." We got to talking, and at the end, he gave me his card. He's like, "Hey, we should get together sometime and try and talk about how to take down government." And I thought to myself, you're working in the government to take down government. That's a beautiful thing. I love that. I absolutely do love it. But it becomes a strange semantic game when we're talking this weird untouchable entity called the state. We need another version of some conglomerate of individuals to take down this untouchable entity of the state. But what do we call the other conglomerate of individuals?
No,
it's just a different name for governance as far as I'm concerned.
Governance versus government.
And that's what I agree. That's what I'm saying.
And it's an important, it may seem semantic, but it's a really important distinction because one is bottom up and one is top down. One is governance is people in their own communities organizing together to have the best outcomes in their community, to have the best, what they think is the best. It's not putting people in jail because they committed a nonviolent crime. That doesn't come under the purview of any kind of thing that anyone should be involved in. But with government, which is the state, you have the idea that they have the right to force you. So let's talk about the delegated powers, right? That they're supposed to have delegated powers that are delegated by who?
Supposed to be the people, right?
Individuals.
Right.
I don't have the right to take your wallet and take a percentage of it and say, I need a new muffler on my car, or I need health care. So therefore I can take your, if I don't have the right to do it, government doesn't have the right to do it.
Within the given hypothetical that you just put forward, the reason why we have civil asset forfeiture right now, unfortunately, is because within the representative system we have currently, enough of our community came together and said we would prefer that the police have the power to do this. Now, I've been to the state legislature.
They didn't vote on that. You don't get a vote.
You do. Back in this came through common law, civil law, came through maritime law as well too. I mean, there was a large portion through over hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, that we've had conversations about civil asset forfeiture, of holding property accountable when we can't hold the individual accountable. We've had multitude of debates about this specific issue. The point I'm making is, if all we need is a community-wide conversation about what should and should not be, I feel like we're there now. The problem I have, though, is that so many people have a fundamental misunderstanding of our current system and how to manipulate that current system. Now, one thing I will agree with you is that this system has become somewhat corrupt, if not insanely corrupt.
It's any system that ever says someone has the right to force you to do something when, we're not talking about you've committed a crime. We're talking about, I want you to pay for this. It's your fair share, right? All of that. That's violence against the individual. That violates property rights right there, because who owns you if not yourself? The government is claiming an ownership of you by saying it has the right to tax you. It comes down to what Matt Drudge says. There's only two opinions. It's authoritarianism versus libertarianism. Those are the only two things. And if you're either in one camp or the other, there's really no middle ground.
I guess I'll break it down this way. John just said in Facebook too that something like civil asset forfeiture wasn't voted on. I guess I'll put it, if there is at all any piece of codified legislation, codified law anywhere in Tennessee books that would obviously lead someone to the correct presumption, the necessary presumption that has been voted on by some state body, that is axiomatic. It's true on its face. It has to be. Now, if you take that one step further and say, well, who voted on that? Allegedly, it was the people that we put in power to vote on that. Everybody could be a Justin Lafferty if we wanted to.
That's the point, though, is that with the state mechanism, they have rights that you don't have. Government has rights that are supposedly come from the people that the people don't have. That's illegitimate. You cannot make the ends don't justify means, ever. And so when you have this where we have for the greater good, what a load of garbage. The greater good is you get to determine what's great in your life. I can't give them a right I don't have, but yet there they are. They've got them. They've got these magical, and people go, oh yeah, they should have the right to tax us.
See, this is where I'm getting back to where I said before. A lot of Sherry and I do agree on. I agree with everything you just said. Dude, there's no way that any overarching body should have a right to tell me what to do with my life at all. What I'm saying is if we do have select situations like a civil asset forfeiture where that is happening, which, oh, by the way, I've been to the Tennessee legislature to lobby against multiple times. So I'm on everyone's side here. All I'm saying is I do currently think that we have the longest lasting constitution in world history right now. We've done something correct. We built upon something was done correct here. Now, it may not be the best version of what we could have here, but we built upon the backs of great philosophers, great men of history before. This is, in my opinion, the greatest human experiment of all time. Not to say it can't get better. I'm just saying there are still mechanisms within this system that if we truly force, we can get better. But here's again the big problem I have with anarcho-capitalism, the presuppositions that people would rather have self-responsibility than remain blissfully ignorant. There's a lot of people out there just want free stuff. They just want the government to tell them what
state, not for it.
Exactly. It should be.
It is.
9:51. Hit this now. I don't even know what I'm going to do here. We'll be right back.
No, that segment was too good to go. Did you see what I'm saying? This is fantastic radio.
It's great. I'm glad you don't think I'm like the boys I was on the show with often they would think I'm angry at them or something.
No.
They'd say you're kind of scary sometimes.
No, it's absurd. No. And I'll say to the audience too, Mr. Henry's playing a little bit of devil's advocate just because it's so much better for radio. Honestly, much more Brent tends to agree with you than Mr. Henry would. but it's just, if I'm not playing the Mr. Henry role, God dang, it's good conversation. It's incredible radio. And I'm sure for somebody out there that's listening to this on both sides that are like, I never thought of it that way or that way, right?
People in this town, that is the
right.
what they represent.
Right.
And, I understand it sounds really radical. It is radical. This country was founded on radicalism. The Declaration of Independence is was a bunch of radicals saying
Who was-
we're gonna disobey the law.
Was it Jefferson or Facebook? Who was it that said that you should rewrite the Constitution, or at least consider rewriting like every 27 years or something like that?
Oh, I don't know.
The worst thing you can do is shackle future generations with the debts and the turmoils of your generation type thing or something? I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean that's the whole thing with the Constitution too.
Chris called you scary voluntary. That's awesome.
I like it.
Yeah. You'd be able to come on more often?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, I'm gonna
Yeah.
get you up more.
Yes, I love being on the radio. It's fun.
I don't even know if I want to get to these callers. This stuff's been so good. I might just jump straight to Andy because he's a new caller,
Yeah, no, that's fine.
and then WC can just deal with it. He wants to talk to you, but he's probably going to be.
Oh.
You know, I'm a small businessman in here in East Tennessee. I date cheerleaders and.
Right. My daddy was important, and I'm important too.
I tell people, John says she's not scary, she's tame. Sherry's the nicest person I think I've ever met in 10 years. I promise y'all that.
I'm passionate.
Hey, 9:53 in the morning. Welcome back to Real News, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to go to Andy here in just a second. Subheading: Trump isn't wrong. The judge is. That's coming back from something we spoke about at the very beginning of this. Let me just clear something up here a little bit. Sherry and I, we've had a long relationship here, and she's helped me grow in more ways than I care to give her credit for. To be candid, which is true, but I just want to say, too, probably one of the nicest individuals I've ever met in my entire life. Totally open and willing to have these conversations. And part of what we're doing on now or in the future is, look, I like to play devil's advocate. I think it's a very, very important thing to do, and I don't always mention that's what I'm doing. It breaks that fourth wall, and then you don't really see it for what it is. It's important to consider the logical extremes of both ends here. So this is a bit of Mr. Henry playing his devil's advocate, because someone out there is going to be listening that needs the version of Sherry and needs the version of what most people in East Tennessee think already, Mr. Henry, especially coming from the legal context and everything else. It's very, very healthy for me to put forward reasonable arguments, and for Sherry to be able to seemingly shoot those down with, yeah, but you're not an individual, are you anymore? You got a problem, don't you? Anyways, go to Andy on the Crown Plaza call number. Thanks for hanging on, sir, and calling back. Trump isn't wrong. The judge is. Probably something from the beginning hour. What's on your mind, sir?
Well, there's a belief among the American public that when the Supreme Court says it or when the judicial branch says it, and I'm talking about the U.S. government, the national government, that they, that's the final word, and the executive branch has to humbly bow and comply with that. That's not the truth. The way the nation was founded, each branch could, had the discretion to interpret.
Boom, Andy! Tell him that one more time, Andy. Andy, tell him that one more time, dude. That's the first time I've ever heard a caller say that on my show, and it is so insanely right. I'm glad you did it. Tell him that one more time.
Okay, well, each branch has the right to interpret laws and to determine what is constitutional and what's not. And the Supreme Court has been, I guess you could say, usurping that authority in its opinions and proclaiming, we are the law of the land. And it's particularly happened in a case called Cooper versus Aaron, or Aaron versus Cooper. But so Trump can simply say, hey, you know what? I don't agree with you about your interpretation, and I'm not going to enforce it. And the only check against that is either impeachment or just electing him out of office.
Yeah.
So that's how it's supposed to work. That's how it's contemplated to work. And Trump needs to tell the judges to just buzz off. I'm going to enforce the law as I see it. I have the right to do that.
Now he obviously would have to deal with the political backlash and the inevitable firestorm that would create. Maybe he's willing to, because Trump always has in the past. But let me ask you as a follow-up here, Andy, being that we got about only 2 minutes left in the show. What then do you make of Trump basically cleaning house? Look, at Secret Service is out. We're talking about stuff with Department of Homeland Security. I mean, you've seen that the firings in the last couple of days. Do you think this is setting the stage for exactly what you're talking about?
Yes, and one thing that you have to note about Trump is he is actually, unlike most politicians like Mitch McConnell, root and branch, that didn't happen, and he doesn't care now. Now he's trying to pivot. Trump will respond to pressure from conservatives. If conservatives give up the hue and cry about what direction his administration is going, he will respond, and that's why you don't play the game of, he'll catch it up on the back end with us. He will change what he's doing, and I think maybe this is a response by him. He knows if he's going to have trouble in 2020 if his base says, yeah, you made promises and you didn't keep them. So I think that's what's going on here.
No, I hear you. Andy, buddy, I appreciate the call. Have we heard from you before?
Yeah, I've called a number of times.
I figured.
I appeared on the show maybe a year ago or something like that.
Oh, nice. All right, buddy. Andy, we appreciate the call, man. Great comments, by the way. You call back anytime.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, he's right there, Sherry, is he not? Trump made a lot of promises during the campaign. The wall was one in particular, man. The wall was one in particular. The immigration thing was one in particular. Locking up Hillary, apparently, that he may have to account for.
Not if they put up Joe Biden. Or Hillary Clinton, like, come on.
See, look, that's, in my opinion...
Trump's got a second term coming.
He does. He's got a second term coming, honestly, because what Sherry, I think, is saying is Trump's got a second term coming, not because she wants it,
right.
but who else is going to beat him at this point? I mean, frankly, seriously, we have a duopoly. That's frustrating to say, but we have to admit it. I think Sherry would agree. She doesn't like it. She doesn't like it. She knows it's there. In this duopoly, though, who has the massive staying power? We need a new Obama. Not we. They need a new Obama to come in. It's not going to be Joe Biden. I don't know who it's going to be. This is why I think it's going to be this Mayor Pete guy. Maybe not this year. Maybe not coming around in 2020. 1 minute. WC? All right. Yeah, WC, thanks for hanging on, buddy. 1 minute. Rod's giving you. Go ahead.
I'll get to it quick. Guys, is there anything more egregious than a civil servant assaulting a civilian, let alone to unconsciousness? Is there anything more egregious than that?
It's supposed to be protecting their life and liberty, and no. I hear you.
And case in point, I'm talking about a Knoxville police captain being present during a guy being hogtied and having a living Hades beat out of him. But I did come up with something more egregious while I was waiting to talk to you guys. It's the Knox County ill-informed voter, and the ones that you're talking about, that the supposed right-wingers that want free stuff that aren't informed, Grant, that came within 28 votes of putting that same person into office as Knox County mayor.
Hey, WC, I gotta cut you there, buddy. WC, call us back a little bit earlier tomorrow.
We'll see y'all. Have a great show today.
I'll talk to you later, WC. Thank you so much. I think people are enjoying the Sherry Voluntary take on the show. 9:59 News Traffic World. That Glenn Beck coming back and more Sherry Voluntary very, very soon. Be right back. I mean, no, done.
Peace.
That was great. I was sure somebody was going to call in and yell at me about the police.
No, I think you and I work real well together.
Yeah, it's great. I know. I always thought that, the time that you came on our show, I always wanted to have you on more because I thought it was excellent.
Honestly, I'd like to move a bit more into the podcast format because our stuff would be much better driven in a situation where I wouldn't have to constantly be here, break, and really get into, allow those arguments to dive, right? I mean.
And I mean, honestly, I don't like hosting my own show.
Really? Why? I think you're good at it.
Well, thank you. And that's what people say, but I don't. I like having a partnership, I don't like controlling things. Like my other show is, I do it with Alan Mosley, and we're co-hosts. Like I am as much the host as he is, but he takes more of the driver's seat for opening the show. And like this, it's like this sort of thing where I just get to show up and bitch. Like a bitch. He does the driving of it, which I prefer that. So that's why I always liked when Josh would host. I didn't like being a host of this show. Like I liked having more power to talk about what I wanted to, but I didn't like.
Well, I would guarantee you, to the people that listen to your stuff, the idea of hosting and driving, whatever else, that stuff I think gone a little bit by the wayside as far as podcasting is concerned. People like the voyeuristic aspect of podcasting. They like to be privy to a conversation that most people aren't privy to, right?
That's what I purposefully try to have conversations. Yeah. Like I try to talk to people about things that not everybody's talked to them about.
Which I think, honestly, the new niche, the new paradigm that nobody's really touching right now is if you can couple the entertainment aspect of talk radio with the informative aspect of a podcast. And I'm not talking about like playing silly sounds in the background, and stuff, but I'm talking about that energy, high-level, driven, constantly into something interesting of talk radio. No commercials, obviously, with the information of podcast. It's going to be a brilliant, brilliant thing. Yeah. John just said, hey, can y'all get rid of Beck and just keep doing this for another 3 hours?
Well, thank you.
Facebook, I know I was going to say I hope y'all enjoyed Sherry, but it seems like you absolutely did. I'm going to start working with her and Roz, see how much more often. In all reality, how often would you actually be able to do something? We just random throughout the weeks, or?
Let's talk.
Okay, let's see how I commit to nothing else right now.
Well, I'd have to. Some things would have to happen, but yeah.
Okay.
Let's talk.
All right. Well, good deal. Everybody on Facebook, love you. Love the shares, likes, all that stuff. Sherry, tell them one more time. I'm sure they know, but for my people that don't know.
The Sherry Voluntary Show on YouTube is the easiest way to find me. SoundCloud as well. Tune in, Stitcher. But if you go to the Sherry Voluntary Show on Facebook, you'll be able to find everything else from there. And I post stuff on there to take you other places. So
What'd you say, like the one place they can go to where it's...
Oh, Little L Productions has my other fellow shows, my other show and my business partner's shows.
Can you, for folks following right now, can you just send me a lot of that stuff?
Yeah.
So I can repost it on my thing or whatever?
Absolutely.
All right, that's what we'll do then. Chris said we can both do radio and podcast. Yeah, podcast is the future, bro. I mean, radio is cool because it forces you to put 5 podcasts together a week, but...
I think, honestly, having the radio show is what made my podcast successful.
Oh, Daniel just linked it. Hang on.
Oh, great. Yeah,
Why
Daniel,
can't y'all see? Can y'all not see the links in live streams?
I can see them.
Are they not clickable or something?
No, they are.
They are? All right. Just if y'all maybe you can't click on during smart devices. You can on a computer. Like if I'm watching from my smartphone right now.
Usually I can do it.
Either way,
yeah.
Daniel just sent it to me. I'll post it on the Real News page as well too. If my people want to follow it, we're definitely going to have Sharon Voluntary in again. I think any given conversation we bring up about politics, local, national, otherwise, should be fun. Yeah, but I don't know what I was going to say. Yeah, end it there. Y'all been the best. You're awesome. Love you. Best news audience in the nation. Best audience in the nation. Period. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Peace.